The assistant officially announced that it was time to begin his address to the nation, while the hero silently gathered his strength before the decisive speech. Looking at the glowing watch, the man thought with deep regret about how quickly and imperceptibly so much precious time had flown by. Leaning over the table in agonizing anticipation, he sternly warned that in exactly 30 seconds the power would be completely cut off throughout the country. Clenching his hands tightly until his knuckles turned white, he began the fatal countdown, concentrating on measuring out the last 3 seconds until the end of the familiar world. President Jang Won-taek formally greeted his compatriots and, before getting to the point, addressed the citizens with an important preliminary request. While the frightened family hung on every word in silence, a voice from the screen insistently urged everyone to notify their loved ones about the broadcast of this address. The young man ran out onto the balcony in a panic and desperately shouted to his neighbors to turn on their televisions to alert as many citizens as possible. With his approval rating soaring, the leader thanked the people for their patience, acknowledging how much the unexplained quarantine had worried everyone. In an alarming red light, the president declared martial law, placing the press, infrastructure, and all roads under the strict control of the army. After trying to explain the reasons for his radical actions, the man suddenly stopped short and, with undisguised fatigue, asked Chief Lee if he had a cigarette. When the hero was reminded of the opposition's inevitable fury, he merely smirked dismissively and asked his interlocutor to simply treat him to a cigarette. After taking his first drag, the man addressed the people again, trying to explain the true and frightening reasons for the introduction of martial law in the country. He let out a heavy breath and paused for a moment, as if gathering his last strength before telling the citizens something irreparable. The deathly pale president said his only goal was to ensure a dignified end for everyone and called on people to finally understand the truth. With the object burning in space as a backdrop, he reported that a brutal survival game scenario had now begun to unfold in their harsh reality. With suppressed horror, the leader of the nation named the giant asteroid flying towards Earth, known in narrow circles by the code name Njambi. The command center staff studied reports in a daze, confirming that the American military had failed to intercept the deadly object. A huge fireball cut through the sunset sky and crashed with monstrous force into the sea just off the coast of Okinawa. The blinding flash of the explosion confirmed the worst fears. The area suffered colossal damage, leaving virtually no chance of rescue. Amid the blazing ruins of the destroyed city, people realized in horror the terrible truth about the tragic fate that befell all of Japan at that moment. Njambi's cursed spores instantly transformed the population into bloodthirsty zombies. The head of state announces that at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the disaster will officially engulf the country. A politician declares a zombie crisis inevitable and calls on people to prepare for the worst. The leader clarifies that only the awakened have a chance to avoid the inevitable transformation. To rescue survivors, sealed time capsules have been prepared at key points in the city. Authorities are publishing a tactical guide to the monsters and planning a mass leaflet distribution. Before cutting off the power grid, the official stated that he had done everything possible to save the city. Bowing his head in farewell, the leader wishes his fellow citizens survival in the coming chaos. The TV goes out after words of gratitude to the anonymous person who reported the exact date of the apocalypse. The hero is disappointed to realize that his hopes of reversing the end of the world have finally collapsed. Armed with a flamethrower and a bat, the hero prepares for the harsh survival of the ensuing chaos of the zombie apocalypse. A confident guy with a white dog proudly declares himself an experienced veteran who survived the end of the world. The story flashes back several months, showing a group of strange players on a deserted city highway. Duck-assed Jack notes with alarm that the upcoming defeat will be his third unsuccessful attempt in a row. The rabbit princess firmly declares that she will be a complete loser if she falls for the same trick again. A fighter in a strawberry cat costume sarcastically reproaches his partners for trying to solve all problems solely with brute force. A kimbap enthusiast mockingly predicts that his opponents will become completely useless if they are deprived of their advantage in physical strength. The cat-eared player mockingly promises a minute's head start before engaging in a decisive battle with his opponents. The rabbit princess contemptuously calls everyone around her idiots as a survival game simulation begins. With a furious cry, Jack makes a desperate leap into the thick of the zombies, promising his enemies a quick and bitter retribution. This virtual game, abbreviated as survival, immerses participants in an atmosphere of crazy and bloody drive. The game world is a dangerous mix of zombie horror and the sudden appearance of ferocious fantasy monsters. Due to the extreme difficulty, even the most persistent Korean gamers began to give up en masse and quit the game. Deftly dodging the attack, Jack irritably calls his huge opponent an unbearable pain in the ass. The project's popularity soared when the heroes encountered a giant monster using zombies as a human shield. Seeing the dire state of affairs, the characters grimly realize the nearness of defeat and prepare for the final battle. When the allotted minute is up, the fighter's hand decisively presses the red button to launch the deadly device. A powerful explosion rocks the battlefield, and the game's popularity collapses as quickly as it soared. A year later, only 4 players remain online, and the kimbap lover is entrusted with delivering the final blow. Using the Sphere of Hope technique, the hero unleashes a colossal column of purple magical energy on the enemy. The figure, in a glow of purple energy bursts, freezes at that very moment. The hero realizes the scale of the loss and sarcastically remarks that making meaningless bets led them to a real disaster. The guy lies next to the girl and honestly admits that he wouldn't be surprised if the game servers were shut down today. The muscular comrade thoughtfully agrees, asking if the others see that they no longer have anything to lose or protect. The girl is interested in the possibility of switching to another game, but receives a sobering answer about the futility of such attempts. The excited blonde man calls for everyone to come immediately and look at the screen with important information in front of him. The guy nervously shows the heroes the video he found, claiming that this is a real breakthrough in their hopeless situation. The team happily huddled around the screen. The hero solemnly announced that he would now show a training video for everyone. After 2 hours of intense viewing, the players' faces darken with the realization that the method is extremely difficult. The enraged enemy rushes into the attack, growling that this whole company of conspirators in the style of a conspiracy will now end. The Rabbit Princess and Jack are outraged by the developers' laziness, demanding that the excessive difficulty of the content be reduced. Strawberry Cat, frustrated with the deadlock, irritably announces to his comrades his final departure. Serve 1 bids a peaceful farewell to its crew and leaves the network forever, disappearing into the evening sky. A kimbap enthusiast asks his friends with barely concealed hope if they will return to the game tomorrow. Looking at the emptying horizon, the kimbap lover realizes that their group is rapidly disintegrating forever. A heavy silence hangs between the remaining heroes, full of a bitter premonition of the imminent end of the adventure. The heroes' digital bodies disintegrate, while Jack jokingly advises them to go touch the grass. The veteran remains the only player, resolutely clutching his weapon in the face of the advancing zombie horde. The hero furiously exterminates monsters for the sake of a video, trying in vain to attract the attention of his departed friends. For months, the veteran has been broadcasting tirelessly, frozen in front of the monitor in a fruitless wait for the return of his allies. The game's world is overrun with mutants, although the developers have simplified the training and improved the early stages of the game. The global update delighted the veteran, but failed to bring back his old team. When his friends finally disappeared, the hero was left as the last survivor in the empty virtual world. Shocked by the news of the server's closure, the veteran bitterly realized the inevitable collapse of his hopes. Hiding from the colossal demon, the hero sadly recalls how he dreamed of defeating the boss together. With a slight smile, Seono takes off his helmet, finally letting go of his lingering feelings for the game. After spending thousands of hours in virtual reality, Veteran decisively deletes his streaming account forever. Hard drives containing recordings of glorious battles are consigned to storage, becoming nothing more than dusty monuments to the past. Now, Kang Seon-ho, nicknamed the Reclusive Chef, lives an ordinary life, deftly managing the kitchen. The hero explains his old nickname simply, his passion for preparing delicious kimbap rolls. For the past 3 years, Seon-ho has been successfully running his own diner, expertly cutting up portions for his customers. The restaurant is doing well, attracting crowds of hungry customers with its unique taste. The hero inherited this house and business after the death of his parents while still in high school. The reclusive chef cheerfully announces the readiness of the dishes, delighting the guests with a hot and filling lunch. Regular customer Migyeon stops by to say hello, remarking on how brisk business is that day. The girl works as a hairdresser in the neighborhood and always looks dazzling when she visits Seon-ho. Migyeon shows the master her phone, asking if he has seen the new viral trend online. She talks about the insane popularity of the idea of calling up the status window by shouting into the microphone. The embarrassed client admits that she has already tried this, but has not achieved any results. Seono laughs good-naturedly at the girl's naivety, not believing in the reality of such game mechanics. Left alone, the hero suddenly raises his hand and loudly calls for the status window to appear. The puzzled man freezes in the middle of the room, tensely awaiting a reaction to his absurd command. The air around Sung-ho begins to sparkle, confirming that the crazy trend was true. With a loud roar, a shining interface opens up before the hero, stunning him with its reality. The veteran is shocked by the characteristics indicating an exclusive talent for developing mysterious dimensional gates. A man is horrified when he recognizes the interface of the game Life in Survival, realizing the scale of the upcoming changes. After carefully studying the skill description, Sayano realizes that such a trait did not exist in the original game. The hero is skeptical about the cringe-inducing nature of the command words needed to activate his new, unique ability. Overcoming his embarrassment, Sayano shouts out a command, and streams of energy swirl around his hand. In the center of the room, a huge, shining gate opens with a roar, just like in a virtual labyrinth. Sayano clutches his head, unable to believe that the game system has materialized in reality. Breaking out in a cold sweat, the man desperately tries to find a rational explanation for the madness that is happening. Sayano frantically searches the internet for news about the Njambi asteroid, hoping for a simple coincidence. The phone screen confirms the approach of a space object, although official services remain seemingly calm. The hero clutches his face in confusion, afraid to jump to conclusions about the imminent apocalypse. Clutching his phone tightly, Sayano fearfully admits the reality of the impending global catastrophe. The man stares at the portal in fascination, realizing that his familiar world has changed forever. Sayano peers into the depths of the shining gate, hoping to find irrefutable evidence of the truth within. A system notification ominously announces that there are 32 days left until the start of the global apocalypse. The hero carefully reaches out to the interface in the hope of finding at least some clues inside. Sayano's hand, trembling with excitement, pauses before the portal as he fights a sudden attack of paralyzing fear. The veteran catches himself in time, realizing that entering into the complete unknown without preparation is pure suicide. The hero decides to risk his kitchen utensils and carefully pushes an ordinary steel ladle through the shining gate. The ladle is completely hidden in the pulsating energy, becoming the first object to cross the boundary between worlds. The ladle, when pulled back, is found to be covered with fresh earth, confirming the materiality of the world on the other side. After completing the minimal security check, the man decisively adjusts his heavy tactical backpack before entering the portal. Gathering his courage, Sayano steps into the shining abyss, ready to face any challenges that lie ahead. Finding himself in another dimension, the guy freezes in silent delight from the incredibly bright sun and greenery. The hero emerges from the gate into the middle of a dense forest, stunned as he tries to comprehend the frightening authenticity of the surrounding landscape. Looking around, Sayano suddenly feels a sharp chill that penetrates to the bones in this peaceful forest. The veteran anxiously checks his smartphone and discovers there is no connection at all in this remote area. The hero leaves a clear mark on the tree trunk, deciding to thoroughly search the area for clues. Sayano delves deeper into the forest, admitting that the scale of this world and its detail exceed all expectations. Exhausted from the trek, the man wipes away the sweat and marvels at the gigantic size of the trees surrounding him. While the hero is recovering his strength, ominous red eyes suddenly flash in the dense thicket behind him. Sayano screams in horror as a sudden attack blasts past him with energy. A majestic valley deer materializes before the stunned hero, accompanied by a familiar system window with a description. The animal carefully studies the intruder with its huge black eyes, showing no obvious signs of aggression. Sayano falls to the ground as the powerful beast rushes past, raising clouds of forest dust. With a sigh of relief, the man realizes that the forest dweller is not going to attack him without reason. Sayano will recognize the danger if he encounters the ferocious red boar and stone monkey from the game's bestiary. Clutching the handle of his knife, the hero acknowledges that this wild place is inextricably linked to the mechanics of survival. Stepping carefully over the dry leaves, Sayano forces himself to ignore his fear in the face of the terrifying unknown. The veteran resolutely draws his blade, reminding himself that the outcome of this battle for life is not yet decided. The hero stubbornly refuses to believe in the inevitable destruction of humanity, although the surrounding reality says otherwise. In the middle of the forest, Sayano discovers the legendary sun apple, shining on the branches of a strange golden tree. Clutching the glowing fruit tightly in his hands, the man prays to fate with secret hope for a successful outcome. Deciding to experiment, Sano greedily bites into the juicy and shining flesh of the rare trophy. The hero's body is enveloped in golden energy, and the system confirms the incredible effect of restoring lost stamina. Sungho sat down exhausted and realized with a bitter smile that the apple's effect finally confirmed the reality of the apocalypse. Having discovered goblin droppings, the veteran disgustedly notes the presence of lesser monsters in this part of the forest thicket. Sayano, clutching his head, finally comes to terms with the fact that the game reality has irrevocably swallowed up his world. The hero, with a heavy heart, admits that the impending apocalypse has ceased to be a fiction and has become the harsh truth. After leaving the gate space, Seonho immediately sits down at the monitor and begins to develop a detailed preparation plan. A man digs out old hard drives, deciding to use his gaming stream recordings as a survival guide. On-screen reports confirm an asteroid impact near Okinawa, starting the countdown to the destruction of civilization. Upon re-examination, the veteran realizes that the game's mechanics concealed frighteningly realistic disaster scenarios. Seonho recalls the metal decay epidemic that instantly turned all modern technology into useless junk. Recordings show the terrifying speed of infection, with zombie spores turning people into monsters in just 5 hours. The hero realizes that the coming disaster could instantly throw all of humanity back to the Stone Age. The veteran understands that full adaptation to new survival conditions can take from 6 months to a whole year. The hero is confident that the exclusive skill of spatial gates devalues any threats of impending catastrophic epidemics and diseases. Seonho hypothesizes that the devastating metal decay epidemic is physically unable to penetrate his protected portal. Having spent all his savings, the guy bought a mountain of equipment, food, and medicine to ensure complete autonomy in the shelter. A veteran frustratedly peruses the awakened forums, unable to find any specifics about actually working gaming skills in the chaotic messages. At the first light of dawn, Seonho went out to get more supplies, trying to fill his cart with as much as he could. On the way back, the hero bought a hunting bow second-hand, realizing the enormous value of a silent weapon in the new world. Thanking the seller for the good deal, Seonho looked around the quiet streets of the city one last time with a hint of apprehension. The man tries to convince himself that he is panicking unnecessarily, hoping that a couple of years of harsh trials will not break him. Returning home, the foreman posted a notice on the door announcing the temporary closure of the diner due to the supposed renovations that had begun. Lost in thought, Seonho is focused on analyzing the plan of further action to strengthen his future shelter. The man sadly realizes that he didn't have time to ask Migyeon about the details, caught off guard by the events of the night. Upon meeting the girl, Seonho awkwardly justifies himself, claiming that the renovation of the diner is a long-planned and necessary matter. Migyeon enthusiastically assumes that the master must have earned a fortune to be able to afford such a long break. Hastily interrupting the conversation, the hero declares the need to leave immediately, leaving his neighbor completely perplexed. The girl says goodbye with a sad smile until the next time, unaware of the true reasons for Seonho's haste. As Seonho watches Migyeon go, he wonders what exactly she was trying so desperately to tell him. The hero almost decides to call out to the girl, but at the last moment he suppresses this impulse, tightly pressing his lips. Choosing to remain silent, Seonho walks away, realizing that he has more important things to do right now than ask questions. Returning to the refuge, the master once again calls upon his power, preparing to open the dimensional gate for the final preparations. Seonho calls himself a meticulous strategist and studies the skill of planning by visualizing tactical moves in another dimension. The hero admits that he was always inferior to veterans in physical fitness, recalling the mountains of defeated enemies from his gaming past. Realizing that his stats increased with hunting, Seonho prepared his hunting bow for practice at a target on a tree. With bated breath, the boy knocks an arrow to the bowstring, wondering if he has enough strength for the first shot. The pull is surprisingly light as Seonho diligently follows the experienced shooter's video instructions on his tablet screen. The teacher on the screen orders to shoot immediately, causing the hero to flinch from the abruptness and unexpectedness of this sudden command. A focused Seonho freezes in a perfect archer's pose, completely concentrating on the target before the decisive release of the first arrow. The veteran's gaze from the game merges with Seonho's determination, highlighting the awakening of his hidden skill in the real world. A lightning-fast shot shatters the silence, sending the arrow straight to its target with incredible speed and devastating force. Stunned by his suddenly discovered talent, the hero looks at his own palms and jokingly compares himself to the legendary Legolas. Looking at his palm with the marks from the bowstring, Seonho firmly decided to train hard from that day on and improve his level. Having completed basic training, the veteran moved on to the next stage, setting himself 2 important tactical tasks at once. The hero's first step was to test whether his current stats were sufficient to successfully hunt dangerous forest monsters. Seonho's second goal was to create a secure secret hideout for storing the weapons and valuable game items he found. Gripping his machete tightly, the survivor realized that until the ordered equipment arrived, he could not risk his life in direct combat. Having stumbled upon the mysterious glowing fruits, Seonho immediately cast aside his doubts, delighted by such rare and unexpected luck. Studying the markings on the trees, the hero emphasized the importance of cold calculation and readiness for any twists of fate. The veteran carefully examined his surroundings, trying to find a familiar place that had once ensured his survival in the game. Sayano's focused gaze froze as he finally found what he had been searching for so persistently in the dense undergrowth. Noticing characteristic excrement on the path, the hero immediately determined that the droppings of a dangerous goblin were nearby. Analyzing the find, Sanho remembered the social nature of goblins, realizing that a solitary group was an extremely suspicious sign. After examining the droppings with a branch, the hero assumed that the starving creature, which fed only on seeds, had most likely been expelled from the pack. The determined veteran set out to track down the exile, eager to seize the rare chance to test his strength in combat. Looking at the gathering dusk, Sanho noted with annoyance that the rapidly approaching darkness was making his hunt much more difficult. Guided by the ominous howl of wolves, the hero confidently moved through the night thicket in the direction of the treasured valley. Hiding behind the trees, Sayano finally spotted his target ahead and tensed internally, recognizing a goblin in the shadows. While watching the monster drinking water, the veteran confirmed that the creature looked exactly like the enemies from the game. A pop-up status window warned of a low-ranking goblin who used spears and dangerous poison needles in battle. Remembering his enemy's love of paralyzing poison, Seonho continued to secretly watch the unsuspecting monster. Having chosen the bow as his primary weapon, the survivor took a deep breath and ordered himself to remain completely calm before firing the first shot. Looking at the old exile, Seonho noted its lack of weapons, making the monster an ideal target for attack. Pulling the bowstring to its maximum, the hero suppressed his panic and concentrated on the thought that he had to kill the enemy with one shot. With a sharp whistle, the arrow pierced the monster's shoulder, causing it to howl from unbearable pain and the unexpectedness of the attack. Realizing he had missed his head, the enraged Sanho cursed and began feverishly preparing his next shot at the nimble enemy. The wounded goblin looked back at his pursuer in horror, while Seonho noted the missed hit with annoyance. Clashing in close combat, the opponents locked in a furious clinch, where the veteran's knife met the monster's fierce resistance. With a decisive swing of his blade, Sanho slashed at his enemy, seeking to end this deadly fight as quickly as possible. Shouting a battle cry, the hero unleashed all his fury on the goblin, ignoring the answering growls and attempts to counterattack. Through tightly clenched teeth, Seonho squeezed out a heavy sigh, putting the last of his strength into the decisive maneuver of this fight. Having knocked the monster to the ground, the veteran delivered a crushing blow, finally putting an end to his first real battle. Seonho swung his weapon down from above, driving it into the zombie's head in an explosive burst of energy. The enemy's body fell to the ground, pierced through by the hero's powerful blow from top to bottom. The zombie let out a death rattle, its jaws wide open in agony before its final fall. The notification confirmed the 2 experience points gained while Seonho breathed heavily over the fallen enemy. The hero looked around, noticing the silhouette of a bag of loot floating nearby in the bluish water. Sonyo reasoned that the mixture would make a healing ointment if corn powder was combined with vegetable oil. Deciding to act quickly, Seonho dropped to one knee and began frantically digging into the damp earth with his hands. The hero understood the risk. An abandoned corpse would attract a swarm of bone monsters if it was not removed immediately. Suddenly, Seonho noticed a red trout swimming between the underwater rocks in the clear blue water. The hero froze, realizing the danger. If trout were found in the valley, then its predator lived here. Seonho's face twisted in sudden horror as he felt an ominous presence behind him. A huge owlbear loomed over the frozen hero, instantly turning a successful hunt into a desperate attempt to survive. The face of the Kimbap lover appeared on the monitor screen, and he began his live broadcast with an energetic greeting to the audience. Standing in the middle of a virtual classroom, the streamer presented a guide to the dangerous monsters that inhabit the game's forest locations. Sungho, wearing a VR headset, emotionally defended himself in front of the chat, claiming that he had worked very hard to prepare this material. The veteran thanked a viewer for donating 5,000 won, hoping that today's stream would be truly fun. Responding to taunts in the chat, the streamer urged everyone to stop disrupting the broadcast and focus on useful information. The Kimbap enthusiast reminded the audience of previous discussions and emphasized that bone crawlers should be avoided at all costs. Showing images of enemies, the presenter declared werewolves and owlbears to be the most dangerous creatures in this dense forest. The streamer particularly emphasized the fact that it was the ferocious owlbear that had taken a liking to the current territory, making it a high-risk zone. Seonho concluded with relief that the monster ecosystem had reached balance after so many years of the game's existence. The hero remembered the sad man with wild delight. The rice soup with a penchant for comparisons with soup. An image of a dog-like user constantly demanding his money back in the game chat surfaced. Seonho smiled widely, thinking about how he would now be able to handle the owlbear on his own. The hero tensed, wondering why he suddenly remembered the happy monsters from the past. A giant orange owlbear with glasses appeared in front of Seonho, looming over the hero like an ominous shadow. Seonho shook his head, convincing himself that this was more of an apocalypse than a message from his friends. The hero clenched his fist more decisively, understanding the need to maintain maximum attentiveness in any situation. The owlbear demonstrated his hunger, instinctively tearing apart everything in sight. Seonho chuckled coldly, realizing the only truth: the owlbear was provoked only by his own desire to feed. Seonho realized that the invasion of the owlbear's territory was happening where the red trout lived. The hero thoughtfully assessed the situation, thinking about the only way to get out of this trap alive. Seonho drew his weapon in a lightning-fast motion, preparing for the inevitable clash with the predator. The hero realized the truth. The mind conquers any chimera, but Khan Solo's body will remain the master of the situation. Seonho gritted his teeth, forcing himself to act decisively in order to survive at any cost. The hero's face twisted in mad determination as he prepared to attack the beast first. The owlbear's eye flashed with a scarlet fire, fixating on its prey before making a lightning-fast lunge at its victim. The predator attacked confidently, knowing the tactics of owlbears. They see well at night, but are vulnerable during the day. Seonho dove under the beast's attack, realizing his only advantage was that he had just one chance to escape. The hero powerfully pushed off the ground, creating a bright flash of light to blind the night predator. Seonho quickly rolled across the ground along with the owlbear under a hail of claws and fangs. The hero delivered a precise blow, plunging a bolt of light straight into the beast's eye, blinding the predator with a furious flash. The owlbear roared in pain as the blinding energy pierced his sensitive eye. Seonho released all the accumulated light energy into a single destructive pulse through the enemy's body. The hero materialized in his cramped room, surrounded by a computer, a bed, and familiar things. Seonho groaned in pain, feeling his entire exhausted body pulsate with painful waves. The hero abruptly turned off the alarm clock, which showed 8 in the morning, wondering about the lost time. Seonho chuckled at the memory of the brutal fight, admitting that the owlbear had been too fast. The hero felt a sharp burning sensation in his chest, realizing that he had not eaten anything since yesterday. An exhausted Seonho lay limply on the floor, feeling the strength finally leaving his exhausted body. Seonho admitted with dismay that his legs were completely wobbly after the grueling battle. The hero pulled out a golden sun apple, squeezing the glowing healing fruit from the game with his fingers. Seonho bit into the apple's flesh greedily, feeling the long-awaited relief from his hunger. The notification confirmed the restoration of stamina due to the effect of eating a solar apple, returning strength to the body. Seonho chuckled with satisfaction, declaring his intention to fill his stomach before proceeding further. The hero grinned with a mysterious expression on his face, thinking about the next steps of his plan. Migyeon happily asked her neighbor how he was doing, beaming a friendly smile in her pink t-shirt. The girl excitedly announced that she had come to have a bite to eat at his eatery, which was on his personal list of favorite places. Seonho inquired about the reason for their visit together, while Mikyung enthusiastically held out the glass. Migyeon smiled brightly, explaining that she now understood the reason for the sudden end of their previous relationship. Mikyung excitedly showed Seonho her phone, marveling at the incredible realism of the latest news online. Watching the news about the store robbery, the hero was internally struck by the excessive naivety and gullibility of his interlocutor. Seonho laughed off questions about awakening, claiming that his own attempts had ended in failure. The protagonist decided that in this situation, lying was the only reasonable way to hide his unique ability. He realized that his power was meant solely for solo survival, not for team play. The hero considered it dangerous to reveal his cards until his personal safety in the new world was guaranteed. Seonho imagined that admitting to having abilities now would be tantamount to signing his own death warrant. Noticing the girl's persistence, the survivor began to politely apologize, trying to avoid further questions about his status. Migyeon suddenly hesitated and admitted to her neighbor that she had actually lied to him about something too. Considering the girl to be a good person, Seonho gently suggested that she take her time with her confessions and leave the conversation. Seonho smiled encouragingly and promised to listen to his interlocutor later when he had gathered the courage to talk. After this, the hero headed home and saw a huge pile of parcels being unloaded in front of the door. The boy thanked the courier for his work, delighted at the arrival of the things he needed to prepare for the apocalypse. Wiping away sweat, he moved the long-term supplies to the roof and left the most necessary ones on the second floor. Seizing the opportunity, Seonho quickly sealed the boxes with tape, completing an important step in sorting his arsenal. The survivor selected items for the operation, laying out a gas mask, an axe, and a protective suit on the floor. The hero gripped the handle of his axe and focused on today's mission to find a safe haven. The veteran looked resolutely at the shining rift and vowed to obtain the valuable artifact at any cost. Seono walked confidently along the forest path, believing that finding a suitable shelter would not be difficult at all. Noticing the dark mouth of the cave, the guy remembered that he had noticed this suspicious place during the hunt. Sonyo carefully peered out from the dense thicket, trying to assess the situation and not give himself away with unnecessary noise. Having discovered a cave hidden in the rocks, the hero noted that he had found the ideal place for his future refuge. Taking out a portable telescope, the veteran peered intently into the darkness, trying to identify the monsters living within. Having focused the lens, the guy saw numerous traces left in front of the entrance by recent visitors to this lair. Seeing the distinctive footprints in the sand, the survivor instantly realized that he had encountered a kobold settlement. Anticipating an easy victory, Seono grinned contentedly and called the encounter with the monsters an incredible stroke of luck. Having thrown up a green leaf, the hero checked the direction of the wind to ensure the most effective implementation of his plan. The veteran hoped that the acrid smoke would act as a powerful sedative against the currently sleeping nocturnal creatures. To ensure the success of the operation, Sanho hurried to collect firewood, although he complained about its disgusting smell. Having piled up an impressive pile of brushwood right at the entrance to the cave, the guy decided with satisfaction that there was enough fuel. Sonyo calmly doused the brushwood with gasoline, preparing the cave to become a deadly fire trap. The hero was about to set fire to the wood when he suddenly heard the sounds of waking kobolds from the depths of the cave. Two sleepy monsters, rubbing their eyes and yawning loudly, suddenly emerged from the lair straight towards the uninvited guest. The kobolds instantly became wary, and their eyes flashed with anger at the sight of the man standing before them. Seono was slightly surprised by the enemy's quick appearance, but quickly took complete control of the situation. Gripping the axe tightly, the boy rushed into the attack and dealt a crushing blow to the enemies who had rushed forward. With one lightning-fast swing, the veteran decapitated his enemies, leaving a bright, glowing trail of his weapon in the air. Looking at the fallen creatures, the hero began to doubt whether their sleepy state was only a temporary effect. The survivor carefully examined his capabilities, wondering if he could continue to kill monsters with one blow. Putting his thoughts aside, Seono threw the lighter into the gasoline-soaked brushwood, igniting a powerful and caustic flame. The flames burned brightly at the entrance, revealing the common weakness of all low-level monsters in this world. A masked Seongho watched the smoke, taking advantage of his enemy's fatal vulnerability to any sudden events. Looking at the suffocating monster, the hero noted that direct burning would be more effective than simply using smoke. The veteran began to think about the upcoming cleanup, realizing that the mountains of ash would cause too much trouble for the new tenant. The chosen strategy bore fruit, forcing the frightened and weakened creatures to panic and search for a way out. The thick veil of smoke threw the kobold pack into complete confusion, effectively sapping their will to resist. Sonyo waited patiently by the fire, planning to destroy all the monsters running out of the cave with one precise blow. Having noticed only part of the flock, the guy was perplexed by the number of creatures that had come out, waiting for the rest of the individuals to appear. Striking with cold blood, the veteran kept a close eye on the number of remaining kobolds, not giving them a chance. In a cloud of smoke, the hero crushed the disoriented enemies, staining the ground with their blood with the help of a heavy axe. The trio of kobolds rushed at the hero in a rage, desperately trying to break through the barrier and attack the enemy at the same time. Sonyo met them with a swift swing, cutting down another monster, panicked by the smoke with one crushing blow. The remaining creatures screamed in frenzy, realizing the overwhelming superiority of the enemy, who was methodically clearing out their common lair. The hero suddenly used pepper spray, blinding the advancing kobold with a powerful stream of caustic mixture right through the thick haze. The blinded monster raised its head in agony and let out a death rattle, completely losing the ability to see and defend itself. Without wasting any time, the veteran delivered a fatal stabbing blow, finally ending the torment of the disoriented and helpless enemy. Looking at the last fallen corpse, Seono coldly asked the emptiness if there was anyone left alive in the cave. Noticing the leader of the pack in the depths, the boy mockingly reproached him for trying to sit in the rear and finally said goodbye. The veteran finished off the leader of the monsters, promising to find the most useful use for the captured and cleared shelter in the future. Taking off his mask, the hero sat down tiredly by the fire and complained about his lack of stamina after completing this relatively easy mission. Looking at the status window, Seonho compared reality with a bad game due to the drop in stats and frustration. He noted that the increase in level opened up new components, making today's catch a very decent result. Stepping into the darkness of the cave, The survivor focused on the next important task of setting up his new home. Looking at the vaulted stone ceiling, the boy joyfully exclaimed that he had finally found a truly safe place. Looking around the lair, which was littered with junk, the hero realized that he would first have to do a general cleaning here. Having obtained the necessary tools, Sanho immediately set to work, methodically sweeping debris out of every corner. Shoveling out the disgusting mud, the veteran noted with disgust that the cave was still too small for habitation. The work seemed hellish to the hero due to fatigue after the fight, but he continued to fill the bags with waste. Sayano opened a spatial gate right in the middle of the cave, planning to use it to instantly dispose of the trash. Stepping into the shining portal with the bucket, the boy felt relieved, because now the cleaning went much faster. Siono nearly passed out from sheer exhaustion as he continued to furiously scrub the dirty floor of his new refuge. The veteran gripped the hose tightly, discovering something extremely surprising and useful during his transition between dimensions. He recorded the coordinates in both worlds and prepared to test whether the idea of instantly moving water would work. Having extended the hose through the dimensional boundary, the hero was amazed to see that objects successfully interacted through the open portal. Looking around the sparkling clean lair, Sano noted with satisfaction that it had now become truly cozy. The survivor winced in disgust and realized the urgent need to quickly wash the stinking remains of sticky green blood off the rocks. The guy seriously considered pouring a concrete floor to ensure the safety of things in this damp stone room. The veteran was upset by the long drying time of the mortar, realizing that the installation of the panels would take several extra days. Valuable light crystals and firestones were discovered in the walls, shining brightly in the thick darkness of the dungeon. Sonyo enthusiastically called the find a real gold mine, as such rare resources were vital for all newcomers. The veteran happily squeezed the crystals, deciding to start mining resources immediately after completing the preparations for construction. The next day arrived, and silence fell over Seonho's diner, broken only by the heavy sigh of the tired hero. The guy felt a strong ache throughout his body, realizing that yesterday's extreme exertion had not been in vain. Seono looked at his hands in bewilderment, covered with strange small cuts from the grueling work in the cave. Having laid out the ingredients on the table, the hero regretted wasting valuable sunny apples on making an ordinary healing ointment. Having decided to test the effect of his homemade remedy, the boy began mixing the ingredients according to a simple game recipe. He combined guaca powder with vegetable oil in equal proportions, strictly following the technology for preparing the medicine. The survivor vigorously stirred the substance in the bowl, waiting until the mixture finally reached the desired thick consistency. Having received a useful ointment for healing wounds, Seonho smugly noted that such a craft comes very easily to him. The hero applied the finished product to his forearm and felt with relief how his numerous cuts began to heal. Seonho touched his chin thoughtfully and realized that at such a frantic pace of work, he simply couldn't last long. The veteran realized the need for constant upgrading, although he was seriously afraid of dying even before the official start of the global apocalypse. The hero compared the effectiveness of different weapons, wondering whether to choose a compact slingshot or a powerful firearm. The boy's gaze suddenly became extremely focused as one extremely daring thought began to form in his head. A smile of excitement flashed across Seongho's face as he came up with a brilliant plan involving the use of a huge ship. As he passed the computer, the survivor wondered if the events from the game's backstory would repeat themselves in his current reality. The guy methodically sorted through the cards in the case, recognizing that any information he found could be vital to him. Clutching the portable device tightly in his hand, Seono hoped to quickly confirm his suspicions about the bonuses from his gaming past. The hero peered closely at the screen, anticipating receiving a multitude of useful perks after successfully testing his theory. Having climbed onto the roof, the veteran looked with satisfaction at the mountain of building materials that had been successfully delivered to his home overnight. Sonyo deftly moved the bags through the portal, happy that the preparation of the shelter was finally going smoothly. The hero went down to the first floor of his diner to quickly pick up the remaining orders and necessary household items. Suddenly, Migyeon called out loudly to the boy, catching him off guard as he was dragging another heavy box. The neighbor greeted him warmly, and Sanho noted to himself that the girl began to approach him much more boldly. They discussed their frequent meetings, and Mi-kyung reminded him that she visits the hero every day to eat his favorite tteokbokki. The guy smiled guiltily and explained his unkempt appearance by saying that he was completely exhausted from the grueling and lengthy repairs. The girl noticed that he used to visit the hairdresser regularly once every 3 months, strictly following his schedule. Mi-kyung insistently suggested that Seon-ho get a haircut right away, without putting off the transformation of his appearance because of his constant busyness. The hero readily agreed, sensibly deciding that for future forays, his hair really should be shortened for the sake of convenience. At the hairdresser's, Veteran resolutely asked his neighbor to cut off all the excess, preparing for a radical change to his usual image. Sungho explained his desire to shave his hair as a desire to start a new life in anticipation of the upcoming changes. The neighbor energetically set to work, promising the client to transform his appearance in the best possible way. Migyeon admired the hero's broad shoulders, to which he modestly responded by mentioning his recent training. A woman shared frightening rumors about a connection between a mysterious status window and a hardcore survival game. The hairdresser shocked the veteran with the news that the players were becoming awakened, causing him to become seriously nervous. Seongho sharply inquired about the source of such detailed information, looking suspiciously at his well-informed interlocutor. The neighbor became noticeably nervous and tried to avoid answering directly the question about the origin of her knowledge. Suddenly, attention shifted to a large snake tattoo that adorned the forearm of the guy who entered the salon. In-Hak appeared and explained the reason for his lateness, while Sungho recalled their previous ridiculous fight over singing. A tattooed guy told of a player who deleted an important video and ran away, trying to monopolize valuable information. In-Hak informed Migyeon that their group was searching for the secretive player's residence, while the girl was unsure about the legality of such actions. The tattooed man approached his neighbor by name, trying to convince her of the need to contribute to their shared goals of survival. In-Hak stated sternly that in the current critical situation, they simply had no right to think for long. While the bandit was planning to beat information out of the target, Seonho, in the barber's chair, realized with horror that they were looking for him. The blonde persistently invited Migyeon to join his team, and the veteran silently called all these persuasions complete nonsense. The hero recalled the deleted video, realizing that In-Hak had mistakenly attributed to him a cunning desire to solely possess important game secrets. In-Hak touched the hairdresser familiarly, asserting the similarity between reality and the game, which only caused Seonho to feel a sharp feeling of disgust. The tattooed guy licked his lips predatorily and accused the unknown player of not posting all the data online. The aggressor gave Migyeon an ultimatum, while Seonho wondered if they had already started openly throwing mud at him on thematic forums. In-Hak stood up abruptly, and the veteran seriously considered whether he should reveal some of the information he had himself. Seongho interrupted the conversation unceremoniously and told In-Hak to postpone the discussion of business until later. The tattooed blonde got angry and tried to find out who exactly dared to tell him what to do. Seonho ordered the guy to leave immediately, threatening to smash his face again. Feeling the bloodlust emanating from the hero, In-Hak instantly became nervous and began to sweat. The blonde man quickly left the cafe, and Migyeon said goodbye to the departing guest in confusion. The girl breathed a heavy sigh of relief when the impudent acquaintance finally disappeared behind the door. Seonho suggested that his neighbor exchange phone numbers, mentally calling the runaway a rotten person. The hero returned to his shelter, put the construction aside, and immediately sat down at the computer. On the gaming forum, Seonho saw a barrage of angry curses and threats directed at him. Among the many messages, he found survival tips from a user with a very familiar nickname. Seonho was amazed at the stupidity of his enemy, who used his real name in his game nickname. The forum was seething with rage, with users calling for a group to track down the hated kimbap lover. The hero stumbled upon a vile discussion about plans for Migyeon and called the author of the message a dirty bastard. Feeling a strong disgust for people, Seonho turned off the computer, trying not to lose heart. Suddenly, the hero's head cleared up, and he resolutely rose from his workplace. Seonho activated the skill spatial gate, creating a bright magical vortex to enter the game world. For the next 2 days, he tirelessly mined glowing and fiery stones with a pickaxe to build a shelter. The hero mixed mortar with water and prepared materials to strengthen the cave. He poured concrete mix onto the floor and carefully leveled it with a special tool. Having finished the hard work, Seonho climbed out through the hidden passage, leaving the mortar to dry. Looking at the bright moon in the night sky, Seonho suddenly became lost in his anxious thoughts. Seonho clenched his fist tightly and decided to respond to violence with force, abandoning his mission as a savior. The hero looked into the distance with concentration and reminded himself that his main and only goal was to survive. Immediately after making this important decision, Seonho turned around abruptly, sensing someone's unkind presence behind him. Seonho listened warily to the strange sounds, trying to determine the source of the approaching threat in the darkness. A creepy bone crawler appeared before the hero, causing him only irritation and a curse in response. Looking at the monster's glowing eyes, Seonho noted that his mood was already lousy. Faced with an unexpected attack from a monster, the hero immediately entered the fray, assessing the complexity of the situation. As a result of the powerful blow, Seonho was thrown to the side and fell onto the rocky surface of the cave. The hero raised his trembling hand, covered in dust, with difficulty, and tried to regain control of his body. Seono coughed painfully and tried to recover from the devastating collision with the monster. Sitting on his knees and clutching his head in his hands, the hero, in complete confusion, tried to comprehend what had happened. Looking at the scattered bones of the crawler, Seono remembered how the bony monster had suddenly jumped out at him. The hero looked closely at his fist, genuinely perplexed as to how he had managed to stay alive at all. A memory flashed through Seono's mind as the skeleton was about to make its deadly leap. The hero remembered how at the last moment he managed to jump to the side, miraculously avoiding immediate death. Sonyo grimaced in pain as he discovered bone fragments protruding from his arm, living proof of his struggle. Trying to assess his condition, the hero, with a trembling hand, called up the translucent game status window. The window confirmed a critical drop in stats, but Sanho was relieved to see no serious fractures. Seeing the increase in level and points, the hero realized that the game officially counted him as having killed the crawler. Seono clutched his head, complaining of a severe headache and confusion after the tough fight. Gathering his remaining strength, the hero activated the skill of opening spatial gates for an immediate return home. Once safe, he immediately prepared a first aid kit and the necessary medications to provide first aid. Gritting his teeth in pain, Seono carefully removed the bone fragments from his deep wounds with tweezers. He then applied a special healing ointment to the skin to quickly stop the bleeding and relieve the pain. The hero began to carefully bandage his shoulder and torso, trying to securely fix the bandages and check the wounds. Completely exhausted, Seono simply passed out from sheer fatigue right on the sofa in his living room. After some time, he came to his senses and thought that in this situation he almost lost his life. Seono yawned and regretted that he had lost consciousness before he could test the effect of the healing ointment. Looking at the new status window, he noted with relief that the treatment had worked and his indicators were recovering. Seono wondered where the bone crawler came from in the cave and felt very thirsty after the fight. He took the flask, thinking about the dangers of the vast forest and the creatures that could attack at any moment. Seono drank water and decided to improve his perception to better sense enemies in the future. The hero remembered 2 ways to increase stats, the first of which was attribute points for experience. The second method was to obtain rare items that gave the owner significant bonuses to his parameters. Seono noted the game's hardcore nature, where it was extremely difficult to obtain a special item from a powerful monster. After defeating the monster, he gained the skill of savagery, but found it completely unsuitable for himself. Seono thought about searching for equipment and decided to study the background of game phenomena through his computer. He learned that valuable artifacts could be obtained even before the silver rain began to fall. The hero concentrated on analyzing the data, realizing the inevitability of the emergence of truly powerful monsters in reality. Seono spent a long time reading the chronicle of events, studying the history of the appearance of zombies and monsters in this world. The hero discovered that 3 events served as harbingers, including the mysterious appearance of a hobgoblin and an incident with a Russian ship. He discovered evidence of the earliest case on Mount Chirisan, where the corpse of a huge orc was found. Sonyo calculated the time and decided to leave at night in order to catch the creature alive before dawn on June 25th. While the hero was planning his preparations, he was suddenly distracted by the ringing of his mobile phone, vibrating on his desk. Seeing Mi-kyung's name on the screen, Seon-ho was very surprised by her unexpected call at such a late hour. When they met in a cafe, a worried neighbor asked with concern in her voice if everything was okay with the hero. Sung-ho joked about his appearance and thick shirt, citing the fact that he hardly felt the heat. Mi-kyung suggested that the recent problems with In-hak were to blame, but the hero firmly rejected this suspicion. The girl breathed a sigh of relief, admitting that this strange situation had actually scared her a little. Sung-ho confirmed with a smile that he himself hadn't liked the tattooed blonde man from the very beginning. The hero remembered last winter, when In-hak caused a disturbance and attacked an old man who could barely stand on his feet. Mi-kyung was shocked by what she heard, and Seon-ho added that this bastard always did crazy things at night. Seono inquired about the purpose of their meeting, noticing that his agitated neighbor clearly wanted to tell him something important. The girl confidentially whispered into the hero's ear the confession that she was in fact awakened. Seono decided to play along with her and laughingly expressed fake envy, lying about his status as an ordinary person. Mi-kyung awkwardly apologized for lying, but Seon-ho warmly reassured her, emphasizing his confidence in her kindness. The hero politely thanked the girl for the trust she had placed in him and the valuable information she had so boldly shared. Seono admitted that the conversation eased his soul, as he had been very stressed out due to the endless renovations. As they said goodbye, Seono hinted at future encounters in the game world and decided to take a closer look at his neighbor. Sayano noticed an improvement in his mood and decided to check the latest news on his smartphone. The hero rented a sophisticated drone to conduct high-quality reconnaissance in the dense forest. He then signed a contract to rent a car for the rest of the time until the apocalypse. Sayano went straight to bed to recuperate and be in perfect shape for hunting. At dawn, the hero began painstakingly preparing special equipment in his shelter. Wearing a protective mask, he began carefully crushing dangerous fire rocks for future traps. Sayano worked with extreme care, knowing that one wrong move would cause a powerful flare-up. The hero then prepared glowing stones, which were needed for lighting and crafting useful items. Despite the bright sparks hitting his eyes, he patiently completed the difficult work. Having completed the basic preparations for the hunt, Seonho began mixing special powders on the table. Sonyo added sugar, gasoline, and solvents to the jar, preparing a dangerous flammable mixture for future hunting. He carefully mixed the mixture with a hardener to firmly bond the flammable mass and resin. The hero recorded the gate's coordinates on the gaming table and quickly returned back to the real world. Sonyo climbed into the car and examined his new useful acquisitions with undisguised interest. The guy was extremely pleased with the purchase of a good car, which he was not afraid to fork out a lot of money for. After inspecting the trunk with equipment and a fire extinguisher, he confirmed that everything necessary for the sortie was present. Seono resolutely buckled up in the driver's seat and announced the start of his long night journey. The hero's car drove at full speed towards Mount Chirasan, where the orc was supposed to appear. It was almost midnight when Seonho arrived at the Cheongsanri campsite parking lot under a blanket of heavy rain. The hero decided to spend his free time before dawn on active training and watching training videos. Seono carefully checked the prepared equipment inside the car before starting his dangerous expedition. The digital clock struck midnight on June 26th, marking the beginning of the day of the legendary orc's appearance. Having donned a raincoat and secured a powerful headlamp, the hero began a full-scale search in the forest. Seono made his way through the thicket as the rain grew heavier, making progress much more difficult. The hero peered into the darkness, realizing that the weather and poor visibility would be his main enemies that night. Because of the thick wall of fog, Sano could hardly see anything ahead, moving almost blindly. Walking through deep puddles, the boy was puzzled as to how exactly an orc could suddenly appear in this place. He once again mentally compared the facts about the discovery of the body near the camp with his current location. Seongho concentrated, realizing the inevitability of colliding with the game phenomena that were now beginning to occur in reality. Suddenly, the silence of the forest was broken by the deafening roar of an invisible monster, causing the hero to instantly flinch in surprise. Hearing the ominous rumble, Kang Seonho froze in alarm, trying to locate the source of the noise in the ensuing darkness. The flashlight beam picked out from the darkness the massive silhouette of an orc, whose eyes glowed red with fury through the veil of rain. Upon seeing a rare red monster, the veteran realized that defeating such an enemy would guarantee the acquisition of a valuable gaming skill. Containing his excitement, the protagonist gripped the handle of his weapon tightly and ordered himself to remain completely calm in the face of danger. Seono resolutely lit the flare, fully confident in the success of his pre-prepared hunting plan. The hero activated the dimensional gate, preparing to lure the ferocious monster into a trap set between two worlds. The veteran threw a flaming flare, planning to use the orc's natural aggression to distract it from the main attack. While the monster was distracted by the bright light of the saber, Sanho began a swift maneuver, entering the enemy's blind spot. The enraged orc bared his teeth, revealing huge fangs, and focused all his anger on the impudent man. The huge red monster slammed its axe into the ground with devastating force, launching a furious attack on the survivor. The veteran took aim with a cool head, waiting for the perfect moment to carry out his cunning plan to capture the enemy. With a sharp cry, Seono activated the transfer, causing the space around the monster to distort under the influence of the magical portal. A powerful stream of energy pulled the orc's heavy body into a blue glow, instantly transporting him to the prepared area. Having slipped through the hole in space, the hero focused on the next phase of his dangerous and fast-paced plan. Finding himself behind the stunned enemy, Seong-ho prepared a flashbang grenade to completely disorient the ferocious enemy. Blinded by the sudden transfer, the orc let out an angry roar, trying unsuccessfully to spot his elusive attacker. The blinding flash of the flashbang grenade completely deprived the monster of sight, giving the veteran the advantage he needed in the battle. Seono calculated that he had about 20 seconds while the enemy was helpless to deliver a crushing blow. Quickly lighting the next bomb, the boy announced the start of a deadly race against time against the disoriented monster. Armed with a knife, the hero quickly closed the distance, planning to first damage the powerful muscles of the blinded giant. Sonyo delivered a precise blow with his knife, aiming to damage the orc's muscles and limit his mobility as much as possible. The blinded and wounded monster let out a piercing scream, unable to resist the rapid onslaught of the survivor. Despite the pain, the giant swung his heavy axe, trying to reach the nimble enemy with a wide circular blow. The veteran instantly ducked under the blade, demonstrating excellent reflexes and a complete lack of fear of the enemy. Slipping under the giant's arm, the boy plunged the blade deep into the orc's leg, completely depriving him of support. The monster opened its mouth in rage to roar back, creating the perfect moment for the final stage of the plan. The monster's enormous bulk began to fall forward, losing its balance under the weight of its own weight and the wounds it had received. Seono waited until his head was level with the creature's mouth and prepared a deadly surprise. With a determined look, the hero swung his weapon to shove the dangerous object he had prepared in advance into the enemy's throat. With a sharp movement, the guy shoved the fuel canister straight into the orc's mouth, putting an end to this confrontation. After a deafening explosion, the orc's head turned into a fireball and the monster fell powerlessly to its knees. Kang Seonho, with undisguised triumph and a caustic grin, asked the defeated enemy about his impressions. Suddenly engulfed in flames, the monster delivered a powerful counterpunch with its fist, throwing the survivor back several meters. The veteran fell to the ground with a heavy groan, realizing that he had underestimated the resilience of his enraged and burning enemy. Breathing hard, the hero angrily cursed himself for his criminal loss of vigilance at the crucial moment. The flaming orc, like a demon from the underworld, slowly and inexorably approached its prostrate victim. Looking into the eyes of death, Seono felt the cold sweat of fear mix with the raindrops on his face. A desperate thought flashed through my head about the injustice of such a stupid death one step away from the desired victory. Suddenly, system windows popped up informing me that I'd leveled up to level 3 and received a unique survival skill. Exhaling heavily, the exhausted boy acknowledged the unbearable difficulty of the battle, but found the strength to rise to continue the fight. Seono looked around, searching for the trophy dropped by the monster, which had disappeared into the thick grass and rain. The hero discovered a rare artifact, and a system notification confirmed a significant increase in his perception points. Looking at the orc's charred carcass, the boy seriously thought about how to safely dispose of such massive evidence. The veteran realized the danger of revealing information about the urban orc, realizing that the authorities could keep the incident under wraps. Remembering Mi-kyung's words, Seonho thought with apprehension about the thousands of players who might soon awaken to reality. The protagonist introduced a vast army of awakened beings, whose arrival would forever change the established world order and balance of power. The guy feared that even an aggressive minority among the new players could plunge society into complete chaos. Seono recalled dangerous types like Inhak, whose thirst for power and strength poses a deadly threat. Before the hero's eyes appeared images of mass unrest caused by players who decided to destroy the system for personal gain. Sonyo decided to destroy the remains so that the orc would not turn into a bone crawler and start harming people. A terrifying thought suddenly struck Seonho that he himself might turn into a zombie after being infected. The veteran realized that being awakened did not guarantee protection from spores that could turn him into a living dead. Overwhelmed by doubts, the hero froze in indecision, not understanding which choice in this situation would truly be correct. Despite his internal hesitation, Seonho firmly decided that it was now necessary to open the spatial portal as soon as possible. For the sake of the future of the few survivors, the boy resolutely stepped towards the radiance, wanting to bring the world to an orderly end. With a short curse, Seono furiously thrust the shovel into the ground, trying to suppress the growing irritation and fatigue inside him. Looking at the remains at his feet, the veteran anxiously estimated how long it would take to dig a deep grave. The exhausted boy angrily complained about the weakness of his body, which prevented him from working with the necessary efficiency. At the moment of extreme exhaustion, the system activated the Will to Survive skill, instantly restoring Seonho's fighting spirit and strength. Feeling a sudden surge of energy, the veteran began to dig at an incredible speed, realizing that he had no other choice. Seono is skeptical about the will to live, initially believing the skill to be completely useless for his current goals. The hero quickly jumps into the portal, anticipating how difficult it will be to recover after the magical effect wears off. An exhausted veteran in a car painfully waits for his body to regain its ability to move after extreme stress. The morning rays illuminate the diner building, reminding him of the inexorably approaching deadline for the execution of his grandiose plan. At home, Seonho looks closely at himself, trying to comprehend the reality and finality of the changes happening around him. Checking his phone, the boy realizes that the construction of a critical defensive line has fallen behind schedule. Looking through the news, the veteran notes with satisfaction that all traces of the Red Orc's appearance have been reliably cleared. Despite extreme fatigue, the hero decides to immediately check out the community and examine the equipment he received at dawn. With a long creaking sound, Sayano opens the heavy wooden box, anticipating the addition of rare game items to his arsenal. Seeing the shiny weapon in the box, the veteran is pleased to note that his combat potential has now increased significantly. Sonyo examines the Indian club with interest, recognizing its suitability for use in the current reality. While examining the contents of the package, the guy, with obvious bewilderment, notices the absence of several items that are extremely important to him. Thinking about the problems at customs, the veteran tells the courier to simply leave the next delivery outside the apartment door. Receiving no answer, the hero looks suspiciously at the front door, wondering if the person outside heard him. Sayano resolutely grabs the door handle, again demanding that the supposed courier leave the cargo and go away. Opening the door, the veteran freezes in extreme surprise, seeing on the threshold someone completely different from what he expected. Standing at the threshold, Migyeon sheepishly apologizes for the visit, admitting to a strong desire to talk after a long separation. The neighbor nervously clutches a bag of food, hesitantly offering the hero to share her meal with her this evening. Looking at Mi-kyung, Seon-ho notices her nervousness as she hopefully invites him to have dinner together. The girl sets the table in the veteran's apartment like a hostess, while he watches her unexpected intrusion with bewilderment. Seono noted with embarrassment that Mi-kyung had suddenly appeared right at his house. The hero found it difficult to believe that what was happening was real, and he blushed with excitement. Migyeon thoughtfully invited Seonho to eat quickly, and he readily agreed to share the meal. As he began to eat, the veteran asked his neighbor the true purpose of her evening visit. Seonho scolded himself in his heart for his frivolous thoughts in the face of the approaching apocalypse. The hero was finally convinced that he had made the right decision to share important secret information with the girl. The guy realized that in the face of the impending end of the world, reliable people have become invaluable. While Mi-kyung was taking out the trash, Seon-ho began to hastily prepare everything necessary for the conversation. The veteran opened his laptop, deciding to anonymously transmit the data through the gaming community of survivors. Seon-ho began compiling a detailed report describing the coming epidemic and methods of combating it. The veteran explained that groups of more than 10 people attract more attention from monsters. Seon-ho emphasized the critical importance of a high level of perception for successful survival. Migyeon noted in her notebook the danger of monster attacks in groups of 6 or more people. The guy continued to study the data on the laptop, discovering new disturbing information. A neighbor noted that a kimbap lover named Inhak is widely hated in the community. Seono was puzzled as to why the experienced Inhak was hiding valuable information from the other survivors. Migyeon admitted that she partly understands the hidden motives of this mysterious man. The girl philosophically reflected on the fact that everyone has their own personal reasons and circumstances. Mi-kyung suddenly announced that she had decisively rejected the offer to collaborate with Inhak. The hero looked at the smartphone screen in surprise while the neighbor told him about the meeting. Seono listened to an audio recording where players were vilely discussing the kidnapping and blackmail of a girl. Sungho disgustedly called the man he heard on the recording a truly rotten bastard. The veteran warned Migyeong that in the face of lawlessness, people would inevitably show their true nature. The guy was advising not to trust anyone when his neighbor suddenly asked about his reliability. The girl hopefully suggested to Seonho that they unite and survive as part of one group. The hero seriously considered his response to Migyeon's proposal to share a path to survival. Seono clenched his fist fiercely, aware of the hidden danger of quickly agreeing to the request. The veteran was aiming to reach level 10 to gain access to a special in-game store. The guy took into account the mechanics of strengthening monsters depending on the player's level. Seono imagined Mi-kyung's inevitable death at the hands of monsters upon her joining the group. Seono jokingly imitated a zombie, reminding his neighbor of the deadly risk of spore contamination. Migyeon suddenly activated her skill, enveloping the room in a bright pink teleportation glow. The girl instantly moved to the table, explaining to Seonho the mechanics of her unique ability. Leap. Migyeon admitted that she only demonstrated the secret skill to the veteran as a sign of her trust. The neighbor expressed her sincere hope that they both would survive and avoid the terrible fate of the zombies. The girl, smiling, offered the hero to become loyal allies in the coming apocalypse. The veteran began working outside, noting the ease of erecting a protective fence around the shelter. The guy resolutely drove heavy support posts into the ground, preparing the foundation for the future fence. Sonyo began wrapping the installed posts with barbed wire in several strong layers. The hero, wearing protective gloves, tightly secured the wire, completing the first line of defense. The veteran inspected the finished fence, deciding to later install modern infrared sensors on it. After completing the defensive line, Sonho thought about carrying heavy boxes. The hero successfully transferred all the necessary things and essential supplies to the shelter. Sonyo planned to divide the space with panels to completely complete the arrangement of his bunker. Finding himself in a damp room, the boy sneezed loudly, feeling the cold penetrating to his bones. The veteran shivered from the coolness, which reminded him of the onset of deep autumn. The hero realized the need to prepare for the night and examined the old heating device. Sonyo decided to replace the thick curtains at the entrance with a full-size door for better privacy. The guy noted with a smile that his to-do list was getting longer. The veteran visited a carpentry workshop to order the necessary items and ask for the help of a craftsman. Seono was quietly finishing up his business on the way back 5 hours before the epidemic began. Seono was planning to stop by a pharmacy and a motorcycle dealership when an old acquaintance suddenly called out to him. The veteran happily recognized the muscular man as his old friend named Hyunjun Hyung. Gym owner Oh Hyunjun, nicknamed Protein Monster, smiled warmly at his former client. Hyunjun noticed Seono's strange appearance and asked if he had returned to training. The burly man assessed his friend's muscle mass while he made excuses about the heavy house renovations. Hyunjin asked about the news, to which Sung-ho grimly replied about the imminent end of the world. A friend confirmed that he had heard rumors about a zombie apocalypse from other people in the hall. The man asked about the belief in these rumors, and Seonho admitted his initial doubts. Hyunjin laughed as he recounted the story of a man who suddenly flew up in the air in the gym. Seono scratched his head skeptically after hearing his friend's story about displaying superpowers. Hyunjin said that the guy went to the TV station for a big payday. The man added that the player had arranged a meeting with the famous producer in advance. The veteran doubted that the existence of the Awakened would remain a secret after such events. Hyunjin darkly mentioned the recent shootout in the Uedo area, horrifying his friend. Seono let out a cry of surprise, realizing he had missed some important breaking news. The hero admitted that he was very busy and began to hastily search for information. The guy was horrified when he saw the live broadcast suddenly deleted by the authorities. Hyunjin wondered why there were no new reports about the incident in the city. A friend showed an area cordoned off by the military, confirming the seriousness of the control over the media. The veteran stood up abruptly, suspecting the authorities of deliberately concealing important information from the public. Seono quickly disappeared, citing business, and Hyunjun demanded protein for continuing the story. At home that night, the hero analyzed the coordinated media reaction to the recent bloody events in the city. The guy studied the video of the orc's corpse, surprised by the witness's knowledge of the exact time of its appearance. Seono remembered how he hid the monster's body in another dimension to maintain strict secrecy. The veteran pondered the reasons for the shootout, which occurred at such a suspiciously precise moment in time. The hero suspected that the game's secret materials were leaked to the government in order to begin their secret preparation. Seono assumed that the unknown informant only had support skills, not offensive ones. The guy peered at the silhouettes of other players, trying to figure out the identity of the mysterious traitor among the survivors. A mysterious man in a suit lurked in the shadows, secretly observing the unfolding chaos of the apocalypse. The veteran suggested the existence of a mysterious puppeteer behind the official government. Seono narrowed down the prime suspect to the mysterious creator of the hardcore survival game. The hero presented gaming veterans as chess pieces on the field of a global conspiracy. After much deliberation, the guy decisively excluded the system's creator from his list of suspects. Sonyo considered the system's developers to be the most likely instigators of the coming end of the world. The veteran realized that the government he controlled would never allow him to destroy the orc. The guy sketched out portraits of 3 key players in a notebook, considering them to be the main traitors. Seono circled the drawing of Strawberry Cat, finally identifying him as the prime candidate for the informant. The hero hoped for the truth of his theory in order to maintain independence from government structures. The exhausted boy leaned back in his chair, painfully wondering about the identity of the true traitor. Seono lay down on his bed and thought about his different behavior in the virtual world. The veteran sadly remembered his loyal comrades in hardcore survival in the game. The hero studied the data intently, understanding the inevitability of the impending catastrophe and his non-intervention. 2 days later, a short, joyful cry was heard in front of the entrance to the camouflaged shelter. The veteran looked with satisfaction at the shelves, filled to capacity with various supplies for the long winter. Sonyo announced the completion of the first phase of his secure underground warehouse and armory. The protagonist planned in detail the installation of steel shelving and drilling of walls in the second stage. The survivalist noted with annoyance that there was little free space in the shelter. The hero finished waterproofing the basement and decided to wait until the protective layer of material had completely hardened. Stepping forward with determination, Seono put off the remaining tasks until the next stage began. Seono prepared his drone, deciding to make reconnaissance of the surrounding area his top priority. The hero was amazed by the enormous scale of the forest, looking through the camera at the endless mountain ranges. The veteran admired the power of the new device as it hovered above the dense green treetops. The protagonist confidently controlled the gadget, glad that there was no risk of being ambushed during reconnaissance. Seono was delighted by the incredible ease of creating detailed maps of the area in real time. The hero in the VR headset smiled contentedly, praising himself for purchasing a truly high-quality model. Having designated the shelter as the center, the survivalist began a full-scale study of the entire surrounding area. In the northwest, a drone recorded dangerous snowfields and signs of the presence of terrifying monsters. The gadget's camera detected an endless ocean located south of the secret lair. Noticing the rich catch on the shore, Seonho planned to set up fishing traps in the ocean. Sonyo explored the valley, making sure there were no dangerous owlbears near their secret lair. The drone's camera suddenly detected suspicious activity in the dense forest below. The protagonist discovered an empty space where the huge corpse of the defeated owlbear had previously lain. The veteran doubted that the predator had eaten the monster, noticing the strange remains of another creature. Having examined the ground, the hero saw many traces, which forced him to postpone his conclusions. The survivalist clearly recognized the characteristic footprints of wild goblins on the soil. Sonyo estimated the distance from the dangerous valley to the shelter at about 1.5 kilometers. Realizing the enemy's proximity, the hero became alarmed by the increased threat to the security of his shelter. Deciding to act preemptively, the protagonist pressed the button to protect his prized home. On the way back, Sonho recorded information about wild boars and deer in the marshy area. Sonyo studied the compiled map, analyzing the landscape features and local fauna. The veteran decided to personally check each zone to obtain the most accurate information. The hero planned to explore the nearest swamp to see if farming was possible there. A sudden sharp sound made the protagonist look warily at the screen of his smartphone. Seono was very surprised to find an unexpected signal from the infrared sensor on the device. Having equipped himself, the helmeted veteran ironically noted the goblin's complete lack of manners. After examining the fresh tracks, the survivalist estimated that 8 individuals had gone hunting. The protagonist calmly stated that he had just been thinking about these forest enemies. The hero walked confidently along the path, glad that the enemies themselves came to him. Seono linked the sharpening of his senses with a noticeably increased parameter of game perception. Every rustle in the thick grass seemed suspicious and unusually loud to the hero. The ordinary chirping of an insect sounded sharper and clearer to the veteran than in reality. Seono froze in his helmet, finally catching the long-awaited sounds of enemies nearby. By concealing his presence, the protagonist managed to quietly track down a group of aggressive wild monsters. The goblins started a furious fight among themselves over a basket containing a captured white rabbit. Hiding behind a tree, the survivalist found the position ideal for a surprise ambush. The hero calmly took aim and fired the first arrow right at his intended target. The projectile pierced the gray goblin's head, instantly cutting off his loud and angry scream. The slain enemy fell backwards, drenching the forest floor with his vile green blood. The remaining monsters froze in horror, realizing the sudden and lightning-fast death of their comrade. The goblins screamed in rage, drawing their weapons to counterattack the invisible enemy. The second arrow pierced the shoulder of another monster caught off guard with a powerful crack. Enraged creatures with clubs and swords rushed forward, trying to find the shooter. Seono gripped the handle of his axe tightly, preparing to meet his enemies in close combat. The hero struck with lightning speed, causing the monster's green blood to sprinkle the forest grass. The veteran confidently cut through the air with his blade, demonstrating the skills honed in the virtual world. Another invader fell dead, struck down by the protagonist's precise and merciless attack. 4 enemies were already lying on the ground as Sonho continued his reaping. The protagonist moved calmly towards the remaining goblins, promising them swift reprisals. The enemy's primitive projectiles bounced uselessly off the experienced survivor's durable tactical helmet. The enraged goblins, with wild cries, rushed towards the armed hero at the same time. The 4 enemies surrounded Seonho tightly, preparing to deal fatal blows with their blades. The protagonist froze in cold blood, considering the timing of the goblin's attack ideal. Seono firmly clutched the red grenade in his hand, preparing to use the secret weapon. A blinding flash of light instantly engulfed the battlefield, disorienting all the attacking monsters. The fallen goblins fell helplessly to the ground, coughing from the acrid and paralyzing effect. The master of survival quickly drew his blade, determined to end this protracted battle immediately. Seono, with one powerful circular strike, instantly cut off the heads of all the weakened enemies. The hero exhaled heavily, recognizing that his decision to attack the monsters at their moment of weakness had been the right one. The veteran looked at his knife in amazement, wondering if the plan had really worked. Siono is surprised to notice that the survival instinct was activated not during a battle, but during a routine excavation. The hero furiously wields a shovel, happily noting the excellent result of his grueling work in creating a fresh burial. Looking at his glowing palms, the veteran admits that the sudden awakening of the skill has nevertheless brought him undeniable benefits. Analyzing his feelings, Sionho notes the lack of strong feedback after using abilities, unlike in previous battles. Having completed the burial, the survivor leans wearily on the shovel and, with relief, sums up the results of the grim work he has done. Looking back at the things left behind, Seonho decides to immediately begin a thorough inspection of the rich loot collected in battle. While studying the guaca fruit, veteran notes with curiosity the restorative effect and unusual appearance of the raw, rare resource. While examining the vegetable oil reserves, the hero suggests that there is a valuable place nearby for the permanent collection of these supplies. Seono resolutely reaches for the white bag of the defeated boss, wanting to find out what secrets are hidden in the enemy's belongings. Suddenly noticing something unusual among the trophies, the guy, perplexed, tries to understand the nature of his mysterious find. Seono carefully examines the mysterious blue toad found among the trophies of the defeated boss. The veteran is puzzled as to why the enemy carried a living creature instead of valuable resources. Smelling a pungent odor, the hero suddenly realizes the hidden and extremely dangerous nature of his discovery. Noticing the sticky green goo, Seono confirms the small amphibian's poisonous nature with disgust. The protagonist realizes that he is holding a legendary source of paralyzing poison used only by goblins. The veteran touches the helmet with determination, planning to raise the pet himself at any cost. The hero intends to use toxins to train and increase his own resistance to poisons. Seono looks forward to how the poison-coated weapon will make his future monster hunts much easier. Gently stroking the toad, the boy names it Jodok and solemnly promises it abundant food. Unexpected system notifications about taming completely confuse the veteran with strange mechanics. Seono reflects on the hidden features of the system, integrated into the harsh reality of the apocalypse. The hero sees a notification that the game will no longer be supported in just 1 week. A veteran is outraged by the release of mechanic updates just before the complete server shutdown. Leaving aside unnecessary thoughts, the guy opens the spatial gates for further exploration of the world. Seono steps decisively through the shimmering portal, moving between two realities. Having completed his preparations, the veteran begins a thorough examination of the wild surroundings. The hero finds a hidden spring that was impossible to see even from a drone. After scooping up water with a ladle, Seonho is delighted to discover a source of ordinary, clean drinking water. Taking notes in a notebook, the boy notes the solution to a critical water supply problem. A veteran finds guaca trees and valuable pods containing vegetable oil in the forest. The veteran feverishly collected guaca fruits, trying to fill his inventory with as much of this valuable resource as possible. Seono prepared the required amount of oil pods, deciding to hide some of the supplies just in case. The hero left special marks on trees everywhere so as not to forget the way back. Having finished his business, the satisfied guy announced his return and began quickly packing his things. The next day arrived, and Seonho had prepared a shelter to house his new and unusual pet. Donning a protective suit, the veteran handed Jodoku a grasshopper and gently commanded the toad to open its mouth. The amphibian quickly intercepted its prey with its sticky tongue, demonstrating the instincts of a true forest predator. The boy clapped his hands enthusiastically, delighted by his charge's excellent appetite and cheerful state. Sonyo strictly monitored the microclimate, maintaining the toad's necessary 18 to 25 degrees in the terrarium. The survivor understood that without artificial heating, Zodok would definitely not have survived in the shelter. In addition to caring for Jodok, the veteran worked diligently to stockpile medical supplies in the laboratory. Most of my free time was spent pouring the poisonous extract into sterile test tubes. Having finished preparing the ointments, Seono noted with irony that he had made too many extra jars. The veteran pondered the impossibility of transferring the poison to the awakened Migyon, not knowing what to do next. A sudden thought struck the hero, causing him to stand still in the middle of his cozy home kitchen. Looking at the gym building at night, Seono seriously considered handing over some of the resources to his friend. The muscular man happily emptied the shaker of protein shake his younger brother brought him. The coach enthusiastically expressed his delight at the quality of the drink, calling the cocktails brought by Sanho a real treat. Seongho awkwardly made excuses for being late while his disappointed mentor waited for him in the empty gym. The hero didn't come empty-handed, surprising his friend with a whole jar of high-quality sports protein. The coach looked at the jar curiously while Seonho explained that he had made too much of the healing ointment. The interlocutor jokingly suspected a trick, but the guy assured him of his honesty and selflessness. The man thanked the veteran for his constant assistance and regular delivery of valuable gaming information via smartphone. Seono reciprocated sincerely, admitting that without his friend, he would never have known about the shootout. The hero was surprised by the unusual silence in the hall, to which the coach announced his charge's grand plans. As he walked outside, Seonho inquired about the details of the guy's plans to go to the TV station. The coach said the participants decided to set up a base there after the guy shared information. The veteran became noticeably nervous when he learned that the group of survivors in this place already numbered about 20 people. Sonyo warned of the enormous danger of such a large gathering of people. But the coach considered inaction to be even worse. The man firmly stated that they could not abandon their people, showing a loyalty that was unexpected for Seonho. Seonho told the coach that he was still considering his next steps in the face of the apocalypse. The man offered the hero to stay at their new base if he had nowhere else to go. A sudden female scream made Seonho jump up and rush towards the gym exit. The veteran's face distorted with fear at the thought of possible danger to someone close to him. At the entrance to the building, a girl lay motionless on the asphalt, and Seonho screamed out Migyon's name in horror. Running up, the hero saw with relief that the victim had begun to regain consciousness and opened her eyes. The girl didn't understand why she was there, and Sano tried to find out the details of the attack. Migyon vaguely recalled the moment of the attack, and the coach cursed furiously at the unknown bastard. The coach ordered Seonho to stay with the injured woman while he personally checked the area for enemies. Left alone, the veteran breathed heavily and tried to stop shaking after the intense stress he had experienced. Seonho tried in vain to recognize the attacker's features, but Migyon remembered only the sudden darkness in his eyes. The girl described a strange sensation of darkening, which was not like the usual closing of the eyes. The veteran realized with anger that the hostile awakened had already begun to act in the real world. Seonho strictly ordered Migyon to immediately use the jump skill if danger returned. The guy promised to send self-defense equipment, insisting that the neighbor always wear it. The veteran warned the girl to be extremely careful due to the emergence of dangerous groups. Seonho recalled the old meme about how there will always be a traitor among 5 people. The hero reflected on the fact that game trolls and scoundrels exist anywhere in the world. Looking back on his gaming experience, Veteran was angry at the uselessness of the complaint system, which went unanswered. The protagonist imagined how cunning trolls pretend to be ordinary players in order to lure people into traps. Recalling the horrors of the game, Seonho saw how traitors lured groups of newcomers into the lairs of deadly monsters. Trolls pretended to be good helpers, gaining the trust of inexperienced players for the sake of easy money. The cunning killers struck in cold blood from behind, taking all the valuables from their victims. For fun, the villains committed strange acts, pitting the survivors against each other in bloody skirmishes. Due to such antics, the already hardcore game was rapidly losing its sought-after popularity. In just 1 year, the project completely failed, unable to withstand the onslaught of a toxic gaming community. The veteran recalled the critical moment when online numbers in the once vast world dropped to 4 people. Seonho admitted that he personally and harshly taught a lesson to the few scoundrels who still remained on the servers. Returning home, the hero concentratedly summed up all the information he had found about the current state of affairs. The boy carefully studied the online forums where communities of awakened people had united after the incident in Yahello. Seonho realized that online communities weren't just sharing information, they were plotting crimes. The veteran was outraged to discover that someone had put a video of him up for sale. The guy was stunned, not understanding when and how he managed to get into the lens. The hero guessed that the author of the video was a troll, hiding behind stories about helping newcomers. Seonho realized that the villain was trying to lure as many people as possible with a fake recording. The veteran was amazed at the troll's audacity and wondered how he had even come up with such a thing. The guy warmed up vigorously, preparing to give a crushing rebuff to such freaks in the new reality. The hero decided to train even harder so that no scoundrel would catch him off guard. For 13 days, Seonho continuously studied combat techniques and weapons tactics. However, everything the survivor had seen up to this point was just the tip of the iceberg. Seonho realized that most of the tactics online only involved attacking monsters and clearing out hideouts. The veteran noted that many weapons were completely unaware of the impending zombie outbreak. With a mysterious grin, the protagonist announced the beginning of a new stage of his personal training. The hero decided to choose a primary weapon that would remain effective even after the onset of mass infection. Seonho began to sort through the equipment suitable for both slaying monsters and fighting people. The boy carefully examined the Indian club, stone axe, and slingshot, looking for the ideal option. The veteran first armed himself with a wooden slingshot, deciding to test its power in practice. Sonyo acknowledged the multifunctionality of this device, despite its apparent simplicity and plainness. The hero fired a test shot, sending the projectile flying with enormous speed and force. However, the veteran remained dissatisfied, considering the killing power of ordinary clay balls to be too questionable. The veteran decided that in the event of an inevitable epidemic, an Indian club would be his best choice. The guy remembered that blunt weapons are most effective at crushing spores inside zombies. Siono planned to buy an ebony baton from the 10th level shop. The hero practiced his blows furiously, doubting the effectiveness of the club against living people. The protagonist watched the results of the training with skepticism, considering the damage to the dummies questionable. Siono was afraid that against experienced awakened ones, he wouldn't be able to even lift a finger. The veteran gripped the weapon tightly, not wanting to leave his training to chance. The guy sighed heavily, remembering the generous reward of 50 points for killing a man. The survivor imagined the coming clash with an enemy who had already drawn his blade. Siono reflected on the brutal assassination system that forced players to fight each other. The veteran recalled how the system tried to stop the killing of players, but the brutal raiders ignored all prohibitions. Images of ruthless hunters who cold-bloodedly slaughtered people for game points came to mind. Siono concentrated on analyzing his past experiences, realizing that in reality the rules of the game had become even harsher. He realized that even high fines did not stop madmen thirsty for easy money and power. Looking around the training ground, Seonho noted with frustration the imperfection of his skills and the need for further development. Wiping away the sweat, the hero decided to temporarily avoid dangerous encounters until he had fully completed his skill upgrades. Sonyo planned to thoroughly dismantle a local store and install sensors on the second floor for protection. A sharp and heart-rending howl that rang out in the silence of the forest made the veteran instantly become wary and turn around. Noticing a notification on his smartphone, Seonho was shocked by the news of a dangerous animal being wounded right next to the shelter. Adjusting his motorcycle helmet, the boy doubtfully considered the veracity of the information he had received about the predator's proximity. In the forest, Sano discovered the massive carcass of a gray wolf, killed by someone's precise blow. Sonyo confirmed the death of the predator, noting that the animal had already stopped showing signs of life. The veteran wondered if this wolf was a lone wolf or part of a dangerously close pack. The guy decided to carefully examine the animal's wounds to understand the true cause of its death. Approaching the fallen predator, he carefully touched the thick fur for a preliminary examination. A sudden rustle behind him forced the hero to abruptly group himself and prepare for a possible attack. A small white puppy leaped out of the bushes with lightning speed, running and crashing into Seonho's back. The shocked veteran turned his gaze to the baby, realizing the tragic connection between him and the she-wolf. Looking at the furiously barking puppy, the boy sympathetically asked if this she-wolf was his mother. The veteran froze in confusion, feverishly thinking about what to do with this tiny defender now. Sungho admitted that he couldn't simply forcefully pull his faithful baby away from his mother's body. Grabbing a shovel, he decided to bury the animal as quickly as possible so as not to attract scavengers. The veteran began to dig, fearing that the corpse would turn into a monster or that other dangerous creatures would appear. Having finished the hard work, the boy breathed a sigh of relief, looking around at the prepared deep burial hole. Looking at the little animal cuddled up to its mother, Seonho remembered his own lonely childhood and was filled with pity. The image of Munchi, the beloved dog he had raised as a child, suddenly appeared in his mind. Casting aside his doubts, the veteran resolutely picked up the puppy, ignoring its desperate and angry resistance. Seonho sternly ordered the baby to listen to him first, holding the struggling and growling animal tightly. Pointing to the grave, the hero promised that his mother would sleep here in complete safety. The guy decided to make a hole in the shelter so that the puppy could visit this place at any time. Seonho began frantically rummaging through his pockets, trying to find something important for the little puppy. The veteran took out some delicious dried meat and promised the baby to take care of him and always feed him. He offered the puppy a deal, asking him in return to help him survive using his excellent sense of smell. Holding out the treat on his open palm, the boy hopefully asked the animal how he felt about this offer. With a kind smile, Seonho once again invited the little white wolf to come with him. The delighted puppy barked loudly in response, expressing his complete agreement to become the hero's faithful companion. The boy gently stroked the pet's head and announced that from now on he would be called Dingo. After some time, Seonho was already standing on the roof of his shelter and checking Dingo's readiness for training. The veteran enthusiastically called the boy a genius and commanded him to repeat everything he had taught. The obedient dog immediately responded to the command and confidently placed his paw in his owner's hand. Sonyo gave clear commands, making Dingo spin in circles to practice perfect obedience. The little white wolf sat down instantly at the first command of his master, demonstrating amazing discipline. The veteran taught his pet endurance, forcing him to lie obediently and wait for the next command. The young predator tried to remain quiet while Seonho carefully watched his reaction. Moving towards the door, the boy ordered Dingo to stay put, testing his patience. The hero took the last important training piece out of his bag, preparing for the final exercise. The veteran threw the object far forward, commanding the dog to bring it back immediately. Dingo rushed into the attack with lightning speed and firmly grabbed the bone with his teeth right out of the air. Seonho excitedly suggested that the puppy's unique abilities were due to its origins in another world. The boy stroked his pet affectionately, calling his ability to track a truly generous gift from fate. The veteran gently pressed the puppy to his face, affectionately calling the little white wolf his good friend. Seonho put his smartphone in his pants pocket, worried about the too fast pace of current events. The guy was genuinely surprised by the sudden message from Hyunjung, who decided to write to him first at 09:12. The comrade persistently advised the hero to immediately find and look up information on the internet for the query levitation. The screen showed a speech by the first superhuman, who publicly predicted the imminent appearance of zombies and monsters. Seonho carefully studied the recording of a live broadcast where a certain Han Jin demonstrated his levitation abilities. The veteran noted that the shocking article about the impending disaster instantly rose to number 1 in the rankings. The hero scrolled through the newsfeed on his tablet, studying the numerous comments from people who didn't know about survival. Seonho noted gloomily that even some awakened players had succumbed to the general panic over the leak. The guy resolutely covered the tablet screen with his palm, trying to maintain his composure in the midst of the growing chaos in society. Seonho thought darkly about how people hated the awakened for their secrecy, but cursed them for their publicity. The boy covered his face with his hand wearily and wondered about the government's future reaction to superpowers. The veteran watched as crowds of protesters used chaos and superpowers as a pretext for rallies. Deciding not to delve into political squabbles, the hero focused on his own tasks in preparing for the finale. Seonho stroked his faithful dog, anticipating the imminent appearance of a second sign that would change the established order. He realized that the coming event with the goblins would force the authorities to finally show their true colors. The veteran announced to Dingo that they would immediately begin reconnaissance in order to use the remaining time as efficiently as possible. Having encouraged his pet before an important mission, the guy emphasized that only thorough preparation guarantees their survival. The hero chose interdimensional reconnaissance, considering it the most sensible action of all possible today. Seonho showed the dog a leather pouch and asked if he could find similar resources by smell. Seonho was transported to the game forest, starting preparations with Dingo for the upcoming invasion of dangerous goblins. The veteran insistently demanded that his pet memorize the specific smell of monsters. The little wolf exceeded all expectations by lightning fast finding the enemy's hidden hideout using the residual trail. The hero closely watched Dingo's behavior, testing his ability to remain completely calm in battle. The veteran trained the dog to obey combat commands without question, indicating the direction for a lightning-fast attack. The white predator demonstrated incredible speed, turning into a bright flash during a rapid dash. Seonho spotted an unusual rabbit in the thick grass and decided to test his partner's hunting instincts. The unsuspecting prey continued to peacefully chew the grass while Dingo prepared for the decisive jump. The baby made a perfect lunge and successfully caught the beast, proving the possibility of effective hunting in the other world. Pleased with the result, Seonho approached Dingo, wanting to finally take a closer look at the rare trophy they had caught. The veteran lifted by its long ears an unusually large rabbit that Dingo had just tracked down. The boy was amazed by the sharp claws of his prey, realizing the increased danger of even the small fauna of the other world. Seonho noted that the local animals had become significantly stronger and praised the puppy for its successful hunt. After this triumph, the partners continued their exploration, delving deeper into the depths of the mysterious game forest. Looking at the smart pet, the veteran wondered about Dingo's level of intelligence in the game characteristics. Seonho decided to immediately test his guesses and headed to the valley to further test his abilities. A sudden system notification about a health increase by 1 made the veteran freeze in place in shock. The boy enthusiastically noted the insane speed of his growth, recalling his previous low health indicators. Seonho called out to Dingo, who had run ahead, trying not to lose sight of his frisky assistant. Having caught up with the puppy, the hero strictly forbade him to wander through the dangerous forest alone without cover. The white dog Dingo happily lapped up the water while Seonho carefully watched his reaction. Seonho looked at the bush he had found in surprise, realizing that the dog had stumbled upon a real hot pepper. The hero was delighted with the rare find of bull pepper, which became a valuable addition to his modest reserves. The veteran diligently dug up the plant with a shovel, promising his faithful dog a tasty reward for helping him find it. The partners set off on a final hunt to a forest stream, where Seonho ordered Dingo to search for scents. The veteran lurked by the water with a harpoon, complaining about his lack of experience in catching a common trout. Curious Dingo jumped in surprise when a large red fish suddenly jumped out of the raging current. Sayano reacted instantly to the prey's movement, focusing on a precise throw to obtain fresh meat. The sharp tip of the harpoon pierced the fish's scales, confirming that the effort had been fully justified by the result. The satisfied hunter decided to finish his preparations and return home to prepare for the second stage of construction. The next day arrived, and workers began dismantling the sign of Kang Seonho's old diner. Construction workers loaded the old sign onto a truck, officially completing the building's demolition process. The foreman handed the hero the documents and asked him to contact them if any problems arose. Sungho looked at the empty court with a heavy heart while Dingo yawned lazily next to him. The guy recognized this choice as necessary, observing the empty street before the apocalypse. The veteran touched the wall of the shelter, wondering about the chances of people not turning into creepy zombies. The hero grimly predicted the inevitability of mass looting and chaos after the fall of the asteroid Njambi. Seono crossed his arms resolutely, accepting his fate and preparing for the harsh trials ahead. The veteran decided to clean up inside, noticing that in times of crisis, everyone thinks the same way. The sudden appearance of a familiar face at the door made a surprised Seonho ask about the reason for his visit. The man flicked Seonho and said that he had dumped him yesterday, and so he came to see if the guy was even alive. Sonyo calmly explained to the guest that his previous dog had died long ago, while Dingo growled menacingly. The guest squatted down in front of Dingo, admiring the cute appearance of Sonho's new pet. Seono asked the guy directly with a serious expression about the purpose of his coming to this place. The guy smiled openly and admitted that he came only out of concern for his friend's life. Seono asked with a slight grin if that was really the only reason for the visit. The guest confirmed his words in close-up, sincerely acknowledging the fact of his strong excitement. The fighter crossed his arms and gloomily announced that he had learned the identities of those who had attacked Migyeong. On the wooden table next to the bottles lay an opened package of some product. Sitting at the table, the men discussed the connection between Kim Chol-jun's group and a certain hated enemy. A friend pointed to the mountain, reporting a bandit base at the site of the suspended construction. Seono was genuinely surprised and asked Hyun how he managed to find out all this. Hyun confidently confirmed that all the details of this case finally came together perfectly. The veteran remembered the guy from the TV show, trying to connect his personality with current events. Hyun admitted that he had specifically asked the man about the meeting with the dangerous enemy group. The interlocutor told how the guy immediately rejected the offer of 3 suspicious individuals on the street. A friend slammed his fist on the table, explaining the mass exodus of girls from the squad after the incident. It turned out that all the participants had received tempting offers from other influential groups of awakened players. Seono assumed that, unlike Migyeon, the rest of the squad members were lured in by a simple deception. Hyun showed the phone screen in horror, where only 4 fighters remained alive. Hyun admitted that there were only 2 awakened players left in his squad. Seono noted gloomily that people in such conditions only care about themselves. The veteran wondered about Ji Ying's fate as he looked at her cheerful photo on his phone screen. Looking at the majestic statue of Themis, the hero decided to clarify the principles of justice for himself. Seono asked Hyun if he was willing to kill people for his own survival in the apocalypse. Hyun clenched his fist furiously, declaring the need to destroy absolute evil during the disaster. The fighter looked intently at his friend, surprised by such a serious and unusual question from him. The veteran scratched the back of his head in embarrassment when a sudden cry for help interrupted their difficult conversation. Hyun jumped up in fright, and Dingo barked furiously at the sudden notification. A bright marker appeared on the phone's map, confirming a real distress signal in their area. The veteran suddenly realized the danger of the situation when he saw an alarm on his mobile phone screen. Migyeon clutched the activated emergency call device in her hands, hoping for a quick rescue. In-hack, with a brazen grin, demanded that the girl immediately stop this useless circus. The girl screamed in despair at her pursuers, demanding that they leave her alone on the edge of the roof. In-hack resolutely declared that from now on he would act exclusively according to his own cruel rules. The bandit with a bat in his hands ordered Migyeon to come down while he still showed a semblance of kindness. The criminal swung the bat threateningly, reminding everyone of his gang's special gaming abilities. Sungho, wearing a motorcycle helmet, lurked around the corner, preparing a powerful slingshot for a surprise attack. The hero watched his enemies closely through his helmet's visor, waiting for the perfect moment to make a precise throw. The veteran pulled the slingshot tight, focusing on his target to save his neighbor in trouble. The veteran fired a powerful projectile from his slingshot, which shot towards the enemies like a bright comet. The bandit in the cap only had time to swing the bat when a blinding light suddenly interrupted his attack. Sonyo's precise shot hit his opponent in the shoulder, causing him to wince in sharp pain. Inhak watched in horror as his comrade fell, not understanding who had carried out the attack. Sungho, wearing a motorcycle helmet, quickly closed the distance, preparing his next devastating blow as he went. Inhak met the gaze of the mysterious savior through the visor of his helmet, realizing the seriousness of the impending threat. The hero delivered a powerful blow with a wooden club, completely knocking the ground out from under the feet of the stunned criminal. Seono performed a spectacular somersault after the attack, leaving the defeated enemies lying on the cold asphalt. One of the bandits panicked and activated his dark ability, enveloping his hand in an ominous purple smoke. The veteran carefully watched the enemy's skill manifest, recalling the blinding power of that black energy. Sonyo quickly attacked his opponent from behind, delivering a precise blow to the neck with a heavy wooden bat. With a powerful swing, the hero knocked the enemy to the ground, completely suppressing his resistance in close combat. The veteran was breathing heavily after the fight, trying to regain his strength under the protective glass of his motorcycle helmet. From the rooftop came Mi-kyung's anxious cry, desperately warning Seon-ho of the approaching new danger. The enemy in the cap suddenly appeared and dealt a crushing blow, from which the air was colored with red flame. The protective glass of Seon-ho's helmet cracked from the incredible force of the impact, barely holding back the enemy's deadly attack. The thrown-back Seon-ho was amazed by the enemy's power, while Inhak arrogantly clarified the identity of his opponent. Inhak mockingly promised to cripple the veteran, stretching his shoulders before the decisive round of their brutal confrontation. The villain ordered his accomplices to prepare for a group attack, keeping a close eye on Seon-ho. One of the bandits activated an electrically sparkling ability, confirming his intention to hit the guy with full force. The enemy rushed into an attack in rage, while the veteran calmly considered preserving his abilities. The hero stood there in indecision, painfully wondering what to do in this critical situation. Through the cracked glass of his helmet, Sanho thought anxiously about the need to open the spatial gate. The enemy, with a wild cry, struck with a fist that sparkled brightly with destructive electrical energy. A huge white beast flashed across the frame, letting out a deafening and furious roar. The ferocious dog grabbed the bandit's arm with a death grip, causing him to howl in unbearable pain. The attackers were stunned, shocked by the sudden appearance and effective attack of the ferocious animal. Seono remained icy calm, commanding the intruders to leave immediately. The burly man showed a phone screen with the emergency number dialed, issuing an ultimatum to his enemies. The bandit leader sullenly adjusted his cap and ordered his men to retreat immediately. Hen was genuinely outraged by the impudence of the bandits, who behaved defiantly despite their obvious weakness. Mi-kyung quickly ran up to Seon-ho, desperately trying to find out if he had been hurt in the altercation. The girl excitedly grabbed the hero's helmet with her hands, insistently demanding an answer about his physical condition. Through the web of cracks on her visor, Mi-kyung looked at Seon-ho with concern, offering her help. The veteran briefly compared the images of his gaming comrades with reality, amazed by the associations that arose in his head. The hero cold-bloodedly declined the offer to go to the hospital, citing a complete lack of free time. Seono offered Hyun to officially accept Mi-kyung into their small group of survivors. The boy walked away silently, while the faithful white dog happily followed at his master's heels. Hen watched his friend thoughtfully, trying to figure out the reasons for his sudden and strange change. Once safe, Seono set about repairing the shelter, trying to drown out the flow of disturbing thoughts with action. Looking at his companions, Seonho suddenly realized that he was no longer alone in this new world. The hero thought that he could trust them with the secret of his gates, but he understood the impossibility of such a choice. The veteran planned to quickly level up and gain new skills to effectively use all the game's privileges. Seono remembered an old battle in the mountains when he had the epiphany to crush his enemies with brute force alone. The guy was concentrating on installing a chimney for the stove, realizing that the level gap with the monsters would only grow. The veteran gloomily stated the fact that his presence would make the surrounding monsters much stronger and more dangerous. Looking at his wristwatch, the hero noted with annoyance that it was already too late, and there was a lot of work ahead. Seono finally finished installing the wood stove in the shelter, ensuring he could sleep peacefully on winter nights. The veteran watched with relief as his faithful dog Dingo snored peacefully by the warm, brightly burning fire. A satisfied Seong-ho inspected the generator and security cameras, completing the first stage of setting up his secure shelter. Seono smiled contentedly, planning to work all night to complete the important preparations in his hideout. The news reported fresh data about the asteroid, confirming its alarming proximity to Earth's orbit. The HSA Space Agency has officially announced the entry of the object Njambi into the middle part of the solar system. Scientists have closely monitored the trajectory of a celestial body rapidly flying past the enormous Jupiter. The giant planet's gravitational field unexpectedly split the meteorite into pieces, causing unexpected changes to the calculations. The head of the surveillance department, Thomas Chandler, issued a statement splitting the threat into two parts. Seono watched the television broadcast with a somber expression, realizing the true scale of the disaster looming over the world. The Njambi beta fragment was the first to fall, splashing down in the ocean near the Russian vessel that was hit. A tsunami caused by the fall washed a ship ashore in Gamcheon port, marking the first zombie outbreak in the country. The hero gloomily stated that the strange backstory finally made sense and prepared for the beginning of the apocalypse. News reports indicate that President Jang Won-taek has not left his official residence for a week. Opposition leaders issued a joint statement demanding the truth and announced hearings. Seono gloomily flipped through the channels, listening to reports about the connection between the political crisis and the impending catastrophe. The hero noted with satisfaction that the media had finally shown serious interest in what was happening. The boy realized that it would now be much more difficult for awakened criminals to commit crimes under close scrutiny. Sitting on the couch next to the sleeping dingo, Seonho decided to check the latest posts in the gaming community. Online users were actively discussing the meteorite and the upcoming large-scale zombie event in the real world. While browsing the feed, Veteran noticed the presence of harsh comments that overall did not contain anything special. Suddenly, Seono's gaze stopped on one of the entries, causing him genuine surprise and concern. The forum featured an advert seeking game veterans, posted by a user with the nickname My Dream. Seono recalled a famous My Dream player who was always known for his kindness and help to newcomers. The hero thought with nostalgia about the old days when he had the chance to play with My Dream several times. The veteran wondered whether he should write first, given the lack of news from his old comrades. Seono decided to bookmark the page anyway, so as not to lose contact with a potential ally. Having finished studying the forum, the guy began to think about the need to complete the construction and arrangement of his second shelter. The next morning, Seono was surprised to realize that he had been able to stay awake for 2 nights in a row without much difficulty. Despite the surge of strength, the hero understood that if he closed his eyes, he would instantly fall asleep. The veteran inspected the installed cameras with satisfaction, noting that the view from the outside instilled confidence and peace in him. Sonyo swallowed with excitement, sensing that the most interesting and dangerous part of his training was just beginning. While studying the power supply system, the young man noted that the efficient use of solar panel energy turned out to be a complex technical challenge. The veteran began to set up complex wiring to convert direct current to alternating current. Seono relied on luck when connecting his smartphone to a homemade power supply for the first time. The hero cried out joyfully when he saw the indicator on the screen that his mobile device had successfully started charging. The guy breathed a sigh of relief, realizing that the titanic work of electrifying the shelter was finally completed. Seono raised his arms in victory, celebrating the laying of a solid foundation for survival in the new world. The veteran walked confidently down the corridor, feeling an unprecedented surge of strength and energy after his success. The hero approached a massive safe where he kept the unique resources he had collected in the game world. Seono placed his finger on the scanner to retrieve a mineral that was harder than obsidian. The boy pulled out a huge, sparkling emerald, amazed by its incredible beauty and the purity of its facets. The veteran smiled contentedly at the rare find, although he understood the uselessness of the jewelry at the moment. Seono put off installing the LEDs, deciding to first sort out the food supplies in the basement. Hearing strange sounds, the hero cautiously called Dingo, trying to understand the cause of the noise. The dog growled furiously at the invisible threat, baring his fangs and warning his owner of the danger. The veteran quickly ran out of the shelter with a knife, perplexed by his pet's sudden aggressive behavior. The boy froze in horror, realizing that he was face to face with a dangerous game monster. A pack of maned wolves appeared before the hero, who clearly did not belong to this world. Seono gripped the knife tightly, wondering how the creatures from the highlands had gotten so close to home. The veteran anxiously assumed that it was these bloodthirsty predators that had killed Dingo's mother. Sonyo gestured for the dog to be silent, hoping to discreetly assess the enemy's strength in the dense forest. The guy gloomily stated his difficult situation, realizing that he had gotten himself into a really serious mess. Seono realized that in his current state, he was unable to overcome the predators surrounding him. The hero understood that trying to run for a weapon would expose his back to the deadly blows of fangs. The veteran decided that the only way out was to force the red leader to leave. Then the pack would retreat. The guy noted the extreme caution of the animals, waiting for the ideal moment to attack their prey. The protagonist froze, watching as the wolves prepared to act only after the first step of their leader. A tense Seonyo realized that the monsters were used to attacking together, once they were sure that the maneuver was completely safe. The hunter remembered the wolf's sensitivity to strong odors, planning to use it against the enemy. Luckily, he still had pepper spray in his tactical pants pocket, which had saved him in battle earlier. Sonyo hoped that the caustic mixture would drive the leader out of the shelter, although it would not kill him. Drenched in a cold sweat, the survivor understood that a direct attack from the beast would be a fatal outcome for him. Sonyo froze in front of the leader, who was preparing to jump, doubting his ability to hit the target with the spray. Suddenly, a risky idea struck the hero, forcing him to focus on the only correct move. Clenching his fist tightly, the boy convinced himself of the reality of success, despite the enormous risk. The veteran called out boldly to the predator, not wanting to allow his painstakingly prepared shelter to be destroyed. The red beast instantly took off, developing monstrous speed in a swift and furious dash. Sayono watched as the grinning monster approached, shrouded in the cold vapor of its own breath. The massive wolf rose into the air for the killing blow while the survivor waited for the perfect moment. The protagonist deftly ducked under the flying beast, moving out of the line of a direct and dangerous attack. The hunter cast a determined glance at the enemy flying past, completely controlling his every action. With a sharp movement, Sano activated the spatial gate, deciding to use his main trump card against the predator. Sayono quickly closed the spatial gate at that very second. The hero doused the enraged leader with a powerful stream of pepper spray, causing the beast to howl piercingly. The blinded and humiliated predator began to rush about chaotically, losing all ability to mount an organized attack. The survivor lunged forward with a knife in his hand, realizing that the fight was not over yet. With a precise blow, the veteran struck the leader right in the eye, completely depriving the monster of any chance of victory. The remaining wolves scattered in horror, seeing the man's instant reprisal against their formidable leader. The hunter watched the retreating pack with a cold gaze, making sure that his shelter was now safe. The boy sank heavily to the ground, admitting to himself that he had experienced mortal fear of predators. Sayono gently encouraged the little puppy, telling him to stop being afraid after the battle was over. The hero gently stroked his new pet's head, promising him protection in the coming apocalypse. Sayono smiled warmly and promised the little pet that he would definitely avenge his dead mother. After finishing his business in the basement, the guy went to the hardware store and pharmacy for his own safety. The tired hero yawned wearily, lamenting the wolves' untimely attack after 68 hours without sleep. The veteran calmly decided that he had gotten off easy, since he wouldn't have had a chance against real werewolves. Looking at the flashing traffic light, the survivor bitterly admitted that he had completely lost his vigilance in a familiar environment. The hero analyzed the monster map and realized that he had completely failed to take into account the factor of random and unpredictable dangers. Sonyo decided to conduct more reconnaissance with drones and seriously considered further expanding his underground shelter. Walking along a crowded street, the guy planned to increase the area for a warehouse and a vegetable garden, without noticing the surveillance. The hero was thinking about digging a defensive ditch when a sudden call made him instantly come out of his thoughts. Seongho turned around sharply at the sound of his name, interrupting his thoughts about purchasing new radios for the base. Muscular Hyun greeted Seonho happily, genuinely surprised by his unexpected appearance far from home. Seonho evasively referred to important matters, but Hyun immediately suspected his friend of searching for weapons. Hyun asked in confusion about the purpose of buying equipment at the store, noting that he did not come there for himself. Mi-gyun, who was present during the conversation, calmly explained that a girl she knew had asked her to make this purchase. Hyun began to summarize the meeting, recalling how exactly Seonho found them near the entrance to the store. Sonyo tried unsuccessfully to persuade passers-by to refuse to buy the weapon, but they flatly refused to believe his words. Mi-kyung offered to show the reports, but Seonho admitted the futility of arguing with people who deny the epidemic. The girl peered closely at Seonho's face, suddenly realizing something extremely important about his changed appearance. While Seonho was puzzled by Mi-kyung's silence, she suddenly exclaimed that she finally recognized her neighbor. Mi-kyung recognized the hero as the owner of the diner, amazed at how much his usual appearance had changed. Unsure of the appropriateness of her gesture, Mi-kyung resolutely pulled out a business card from her stylish blue wallet. The girl introduced herself as Cho Soo-yeon, and Seonho politely responded with his real name. Seonho froze in utter shock when he realized the true professional affiliation of his attractive neighbor. The hero was shocked to discover that the outgoing Mi-kyung was actually an experienced hospital doctor. Seonho began to brief the doctor on the situation, deciding to teach her survival skills on par with Hyun. Cho Soo-yeon touched her chin thoughtfully, honestly admitting her deep skepticism about the game. The girl reasonably noted the impossibility of a scientific victory, and Sanho sullenly confirmed her absolutely correct guess. Maintaining the utmost seriousness, Seano prepared to listen to the last and most important question from his new ally. Migyeon, with undisguised curiosity, asked if her neighbor was really the awakened player. Laughing, the girl praised Seano's confidence, and he mentally admired her amazing and sharp wit. Soo-young sincerely thanked Seano for his help, emphasizing that he had now fully earned her trust. The girl seriously explained that Seonho and Hyun have completely different levels of abilities and training. Seonho silently headed towards the exit, while Soo-yeon carefully watched his confident and calm gait. Soo-young extended her hand with a welcoming smile and invited Sunho to become truly loyal friends. The next day, Seonho concentrated on polishing the blade, turning an ordinary stick into a dangerous, deadly spear. The hero examined the finished weapon with obvious delight, recognizing it as quite suitable for the upcoming hunt. After checking the equipment, Sano called Dingo and commanded the dog to get ready to go out immediately. Gently stroking his pet, Seonho solemnly promised to take revenge on his enemies for the tragic death of his mother. The guy cold-bloodedly decided to track down and kill anyone who dared to discover their secret hideout. Dressed in full gear, Seonho ordered Dingo to give it his all today. Seonho carefully counted the pack of forest wolves, finding only 4 individuals in the forest clearing. The hunter calmly noted the absence of the leader, which made the predators much more vulnerable and disoriented. Hiding in the dense thicket, Seonho turned on a powerful flashlight to detect hidden traces of monsters. The huge owlbear furiously tore at its prey while the hero assessed the safe distance for a surprise attack. Sonyo hid behind a massive boulder, realizing how easy it would be to deal with the disparate pack of animals. The hero watched with disdain as the wolves lost their usual leader and completely lost their coordination. Seonho decided to methodically lure out and eliminate the predators one by one, taking advantage of his hidden position. Using his net expertly, the veteran trapped the first wolf, ignoring its desperate attempts to escape. Sonyo calmly approached the beast struggling in its bonds, mockingly promising it quick deliverance. With a decisive blow of his spear, Seonho finished off the monster, receiving 3 experience points for the successful kill. The wolves bared their teeth furiously, preparing to simultaneously attack the intruder who dared to disturb their forest peace and quiet. Seonho rushed forward, clutching his makeshift spear tightly and skillfully using the massive boulder as cover. The predators, with a wild growl, rushed into a frontal attack, trying to tear the enemy apart with their powerful and extremely sharp fangs. The veteran coolly ducked to the ground as one of the monsters flew straight over his head in a long jump. The hero instantly snatched up the canister and sprayed a thick stream of gas onto the attacking beast's face, completely blinding and disorienting it. The hunter raised his sprayer high, masterfully maintaining his distance and not allowing the enraged pack to completely surround him in the forest. With a powerful swing, Seongho delivered a crushing sidekick, decisively throwing the nearest opponent far away from him. A huge wolf with bloodshot eyes made a desperate lunge, hoping to grab the well-armored fighter by the throat. Faithful Dingo intercepted the attack with lightning speed, for which he received praise from Seongho, who decided to finish the fight himself. Seongho calmly thrust his spear into the fallen monster, confidently preparing for the inevitable encounter with the next wave of dangerous enemies. The veteran cold-bloodedly decided to finish off the remaining opponents, leaving them no chance of escape. Seonho watched in amazement as the notification about reaching level 5 and receiving new unique effects appeared. The hero prepared to activate the gate, anticipating the new possibilities opened up by the new game mechanics. Seonho literally froze in surprise when something completely incredible and amazing unfolded before his eyes. The spatial gate showed the hero his own cozy apartment, allowing him to calmly observe the house from afar. The veteran was delighted to see that the long-awaited invisibility effect of his gate now functioned absolutely flawlessly. The hunter thoughtfully considered the improvements that had finally helped solve the old problems with concealing the entrance. Various locations flashed before Seonho's eyes, confirming that the number of gates had increased significantly as his level increased. Having realized the critical importance of the levels, Seonho firmly promised himself never to ignore the coming dangerous omens. Despite his success, Seonho clearly understood that there were still countless difficult tasks ahead of him. After the hunt, Seonho decided to bury the wolf carcasses so as not to attract the attention of other dangerous forest predators. In 2 days, the hero did a lot of work, preparing his new shelter for the harsh conditions of survival. The veteran used the drone to study the ecosystem, carefully scanning the dense forest for any hidden threats. Reconnaissance showed no monsters nearby, finding only small and completely harmless animals within a kilometer radius. Sonyo double-checked the safety of the area and contentedly crossed off the dangerous creatures from his current list. The drone found a goblin nest, but the hero decided to hold off on the attack due to the possible presence of a powerful hobgoblin. Having completed his reconnaissance, Sanho took a chainsaw and, together with a joyful dingo, began to set up his secret camp. The guy cleared the area of bushes and, with the help of his faithful pet, completely leveled the ground for future construction. The diligent dingo helped the owner outline the boundaries of the plot, the diameter of which ultimately amounted to exactly 30 meters. Sonyo surrounded the camp with barbed wire and planned to dig a deep ditch to ensure maximum security for the base. Through the gate, Sayano closely followed the news about the government's plans to launch a large-scale investigation into the affairs of awakened players. In reality, the hero bought building materials at a large store, trying to stay as far away from his own home as possible. The hunter had prudently brought a full set of tools to effectively prepare his shelter for the coming harsh apocalypse. On his way home, Sayano sneaked into someone else's hideout and took detailed photographs of Kim Chol-jung's camp. He rented a motorcycle and a mini excavator, hoping to complete all the work before the devastating Iron Death began. The veteran extracted poison from the frog daily, successfully preparing enough paralytic toxin for his new weapon. Later, the guy was completely confused by what he saw on the screen, seriously suspecting someone was playing a stupid and inappropriate prank. Serva 1 suddenly joined the game in a ridiculous strawberry costume, which completely stunned Sanho. The hero analyzed news reports of the shooting and strict government censorship, recognizing the rapidly growing seriousness of the current situation. Looking at the presidential residence, Sayano wondered anxiously if all this was just a coincidence. Sonyo coldly analyzed Serv 1's connection with the president, suspecting the presence of hidden agreements that were crucial to survival. The hunter recalled that Serv 1 was a collector who was always willing to exchange valuable game items for reliable information. Sayano considered the president the most logical ally for such a knowledgeable player with a high position in the state. The hero suspected a clever bluff, seriously perplexed as to why such a benevolent player as Maedrim would need to commit such actions. Feeling slightly confused by what was happening, Sayano firmly decided that any delay in the current situation was completely pointless. Realizing the possibility of Serv 1's alliance with Maedrim, the veteran grimly acknowledged the need to immediately and radically alter his original plan. Meanwhile, a mysterious guy in glasses and a green hoodie was working intently at the computer in the semi-darkness of his room. The unknown person has cleverly created a completely new identity in virtual reality, preparing to carry out his mysterious and hidden plans. The guy sent a message inviting him to meet in a secret chat, eagerly awaiting a quick response from his interlocutor. The player calmly decided to immediately delete the sent message if he did not receive a response in the near future. Sayano was surprised by Maedrim's immediate response, jokingly suggesting that he had no work to do. The guy logged into the game, deciding to personally verify the authenticity of his mysterious interlocutor's intentions. Sayano watched intently as Maedrim entered the empty digital secret meeting room. Maedrim politely thanked Sungho for the invitation, introducing himself as a tall stranger. The cloaked hero coldly admitted that this meeting was unlikely to bring any pleasure to either of them. Sungho, wearing a duck mask, warned his opponent of the consequences of any attempt to deliberately anger him. The stranger in the hat suddenly realized that the legendary veteran was standing in front of him. Sayano answered calmly, cryptically, unwilling to fully confirm or deny his true identity. Maedrim asked Seonho to take a 3-question test to establish complete mutual trust. The first question concerned the height of the werewolf's jump, and Seonho immediately gave a perfectly accurate answer. When asked about the owlbear's weakness, Seonho confidently answered that it was bright light. The hero explained the process of turning zombies into ghouls through the absorption of nutrients. Seonho was indignant at the unnecessary question about the number of omens. Recalling the original agreement between the parties, the stranger laughed and called the hero a true veteran, which only provoked a sharp demand to shut up. Having found the evidence sufficient, Veteran demanded that Serva 1 be called immediately for official accession. Maedrim disappointed the interlocutor with the message about the impossibility of inviting the collector right now. The mysterious player suddenly changed the topic to the weather, foreshadowing the imminent arrival of important events. In reality, Sayano became suspicious when he realized his virtual opponent's clear intention to stall for time. A sudden guess made the hero go cold with horror when he realized the true purpose of the conversation. Maedrim suddenly said goodbye, leaving Sayano furious that his IP address had been successfully tracked. A group of men in suits entered the computer club and were greeted by the administrator. The leader ordered his subordinates to guard the door, thinking about his hidden plans and goals. The stranger silently put on his gloves, completely ignoring the girl's request to pay the bill. The man roughly grabbed the girl by the arm, mentioning his pre-prepared ambush. Inhack used psychotic force, bending the will of the frightened club employee to his orders. Seono realized the mortal risk of becoming a spineless puppet of his dangerous enemies. The hero decisively ordered the system to open a spatial gate right in the computer room. The guy in the green hoodie grabbed his head in horror, realizing the inevitability of an attack. The stalker placed a commanding hand on the hacker's shoulder, apologizing for his abrupt intrusion. In-Hack, with a frightening glint in his eyes, demanded that the boy immediately confirm his identity. The man in the suit noticed his partner's signal and realized that there was only one shelter left. He entered the toilet and ordered the unknown enemy to stop hiding and come out. The pursuer opened the door, assuming he had encountered the awakened secretive type. The hero filled the bucket with water, recalling his rich experience of fighting invisible monsters. He decided to splash some water to locate the enemy by the dry areas. Raising his hand, the man coldly discussed the consequences of capturing the fugitive. Touching the wall, he announced the end of the game and rejoiced at the precise location of the gate. The veteran noted ironically that the helmeted enemy almost fell into the trap. Observing the enemy, he realized that it was not a matter of stealth skill at all. The man radioed an order to immediately capture the discovered mobile player alive. The man in the suit bitterly recalled the rich, good-natured man from the game who decided to enslave real people. A helmeted Seong-ho thanked the player nicknamed My Dream while coating the tip of his spear with a poisonous green liquid. The veteran admitted that outside help helped him cast aside his last hesitations and finally decide on a plan. The spear-wielding hero firmly declared to his opponent that from now on he would judge others only by his own standards. Seono, overcome with rage, promised to mercilessly respond with cruelty to any aggression shown towards him or people. The man in the business suit asked with obvious bewilderment about the identity of the mysterious and unknown veteran. Seono's opponent froze in tension, pondering the strange connection between the hero's skills and his swift movements. The man nervously washed his hands under the tap, trying to comprehend the colossal gaming experience of his mysterious opponent. While the enemy was lost in his thoughts, Seong-ho, wearing a helmet, suddenly appeared behind him with a greeting. The frightened enemy turned sharply to the mirror, noticing in the reflection the hero's glowing spear raised to strike. Sonyo pierced his enemy's leg with a swift lunge, leaving a deep mark on the fabric from the poisoned blade. The enemy watched in horror as poisonous green veins quickly spread across his face. Struck by the toxin, the man realized that the same legendary unknown veteran stood before him. Sonyo slammed the enemy's head hard into the wall, forbidding him to make any unnecessary movements without a command. The hero mockingly asked his poisoned opponent what it was like to feel the effects of deadly poison. The veteran dispassionately ordered the captive to remain silent, continuing to hold him in a helpless and humiliating position. Sonyo reminded that the official training had not yet begun, meaning the murder would now go unpunished. The system confirmed the inactivity of the killer mode, freeing the hero to commit any bloody massacre. The veteran held a sharp knife to the enemy's throat, hinting at the absence of any legal consequences. Seono deftly searched the fallen enemy, demonstrating the professional skills of a true master of survival in harsh conditions. Sonyo coldly noted the enemy's complete immobility, inquiring about the reasons for his betrayal of the other survivors. The hero dismissively compared the defeated enemy to a game monster, from which valuable loot could now be collected. The man, exhausted by the poison, cursed through his teeth, realizing his dire situation and the inevitability of defeat. Sonyo took the enemy's personal belongings, calling it a well-deserved payment for his attempt to deceive and subjugate him. The veteran loomed over the captive with a knife, promising to act without any compassion next time. The hero remembered how he successfully hid from My Dream's thugs and instantly moved to the safe game world. Sonyo began to carefully study the documents he had found, laying out the enemy's weapons and personal belongings on the table. The veteran found himself in possession of the identity card of 38-year-old Kwon Kyung-jun, revealing the true identity of his treacherous opponent. It turned out that Kwon owned a golf club and used 3 secure bunkers as his secret bases. The protagonist analyzed the enemy's ability to control minds, which increased in direct proportion to the number of game sessions. Seono put his smartphone away, deciding that he had collected all the useful information about his defeated opponent. The hero thought about the fact that long playing time does not guarantee the acquisition of strong features. The veteran admitted that for experienced survivalists, his unique skill is practically a cheat code. Seono decided to finish gathering information for now, hoping to meet other veterans with different abilities. The protagonist checked his weapons magazine, confident that the apocalypse was approaching quickly, as per the game's scenario. The hero noted that the awakening process itself significantly enhances the physical performance of any ordinary person. Seono fired a precise practice shot, comparing his new abilities with the strength of ordinary people. The veteran was pleased with the result, confirming that his recent hard training had not been in vain. Siono planned to further hone his shooting skills by trying to use the gun without a loaded magazine. The sudden appearance of a glowing gaming monitor in front of the hero made him freeze in place with caution. A stunned Seongho stared at the endless stream of system alerts filling his monitor screen. The hero's eyes flashed feverishly as he realized the true scale of the changes that had begun in the world. The veteran saw reports of monsters and goblins appearing, marking the beginning of the game's second omen. A white car flew at high speed along the night highway, heading towards the Hwangsan Reservoir. Sonyo cursed, noticing the late hour on the clock and realizing the critical shortage of precious minutes. The tense hero gripped the steering wheel tightly, wondering why Koya-san had become the epicenter of the new threat. After reading online about the terrifying goblins at the reservoir, Seonho's worst fears were confirmed. The veteran drove with concentration through the night darkness, preparing for his first serious collision. The car braked sharply at the very edge of the dense forest, its headlights illuminating the impenetrable darkness of the trees. Sonyo summoned Dingo and announced the start of the goblin hunt in the dark forest. Sonyo rushed to the mountains after noticing police cordoning off the reservoir area due to the noise. The hero remembered the goblins setting up a base under the leadership of a huge and ferocious hobgoblin. The veteran turned to his faithful Dingo, preparing to begin searching for the enemy's lair in the forest thicket. Seono asked his pet if he had managed to smell the pungent odor of monsters nearby. The wary dog froze, listening attentively to the suspicious rustling sounds coming from the dark depths of the forest. Dingo quickly rushed forward, confirming his owner's guess about the nearby presence of dangerous creatures. The faithful pet rushed swiftly along the path, leading the protagonist on the trail of the discovered goblins. The small animal nimbly made its way through the thick grass, maintaining maximum speed in the night forest. Sonyo glided silently through the thicket, trying not to reveal his presence ahead of time. The hero realized with annoyance the gravity of the situation, feeling the growing pressure in the face of a new threat. Sonyo was in the forest looking for the best route while his faithful dog gave a loud call. The veteran was horrified to discover the bodies of the police officers and the goblins they had defeated in the depths of the forest. The hero ordered himself to remain calm as he felt the wounded officer's chest with green veins. Seono was relieved to realize that the law enforcement officers were still breathing and alive. The survivor noted the lack of obvious wounds, as the fighters were paralyzed by the paralytic poison of the forest monsters. He looked warily at the empty holster, wondering who had stolen his service weapon after the attack. Sonyo estimated that the victims would regain consciousness in about 20 or 30 minutes. The strategist decided to continue examining the area and turned his attention to the mutilated corpses of the goblins. The veteran found bullet holes on the monsters' bodies, confirming that the officers had weapons. The guy wondered why someone would need to take the gun in the midst of this terrible chaos. Seono froze in amazement as he realized the proximity of the extremely rare golden goblin. The veteran saw a monster wearing a crown, carrying a huge sack of treasure on his back. The hero was determined to pursue, not wanting to miss such valuable prey. The guy took the policeman's phone and immediately called emergency services for the officers. He sent a message with coordinates and warned about the danger of rotting bodies. Seono realized that the social media posts had turned the situation into a death race. The young man rushed forward with Dingo, completely trusting the dog's keen sense of smell. A deafening roar echoed through the forest as the heavy weapon met a powerful obstacle. The unknown warrior attacked the goblin with a swift leap, causing him to squeal. A horde of monsters surrounded the survivors while a frightened soldier clarified the plan with the captain. The captain used his powers, ignoring his subordinates' doubts about his ability to hold back the enemy onslaught. The fighter demonstrated the power of telekinesis, warning his allies to buy time to prepare. The man confidently controlled the hovering stones, urging his comrades to remain completely calm in battle. Massive boulders crushed the goblin, while the squad leader promised the fighter to provide him with reliable cover. One of the survivors clarified the location of reinforcements after learning about the arrival of the main detachment at the mountain. Police put up barriers while those around doubted the group's ability to quickly reach the summit. The captain urged that the opportunity be seized, despite the allies' panicked proposals to immediately begin a general retreat. Seono watched the monsters jump with a calm expression, recalling their dangerous habits from his gaming experience. The fighter deftly fought off the creatures, noticing the absence of the enemy's usual primary weapons. The captain ordered his partner to continue the battle, trying to suppress the growing fear of his visibly trembling subordinate. The captain planned to gain an advantage by capturing the breakaway group of goblins after the current battle. The leader ordered his partner to stop whining and focus entirely on repelling enemy attacks. The enraged monster suddenly struck a precise blow, causing the fighter to cry out in intense pain. The frightened assistant inquired about the captain's condition while he was lamenting the goblin's resistance. The fighter realized in confusion that he was surrounded by a dense ring of bloodthirsty forest creatures. The enemy's onslaught intensified, and the survivors used their last strength to hold back the furious attack of the crowd. A glowing arrow suddenly pierced the head of a goblin who was about to attack the exhausted man from behind. Mysterious magical projectiles began to strike the monsters in the dense forest thicket one after another. The stunned captain froze, watching the instant death of the numerous enemies surrounding him. The man looked back, trying to understand where this saving and deadly arrow had come from. Sonyo thought about the futility of his intervention, touching the equipment while having a lot of personal matters to attend to. The hero confidently concluded that he had paid a fair price for the information he had received. The young man watched the fighters through the portal, realizing the impossibility of their reaching the top of the mountain. The veteran spotted an exhausted squad of monsters in the forest, planning his next surprise attack. The guy resolutely grabbed the can of drink, realizing the urgent need to act as quickly as possible. Seongho, wearing a protective helmet, prepared his weapon and began to implement his cunning plan of destruction. The small stone hit the goblin's head with precision, successfully diverting the monster's attention to itself. The enraged creature approached the shimmering lure, completely unaware of the deadly trap ahead. Sonyo fired a precise shot that hit the enemy from behind as he carelessly approached the gate. The heavy spear pierced the goblin's chest as the veteran coldly planned to make him scream. Seongho masterfully used the gate as a shield, piercing the goblin through the magical portal with a long spear. The veteran quickly pulled out his weapon, determined to finally erase the bloody traces of the recent attack. The hobgoblin, with his incredibly keen senses, looked around warily, suspecting the presence of a hidden enemy in the forest. The terrifying leader stared with growing anger at the body of his fallen and completely lifeless subordinate. The enraged monster screamed loudly, ordering the 3 remaining goblins to immediately attack the invisible, deadly threat. Weakened by wild fear, the creatures began to slowly retreat, sensing the approach of their inevitable death. Seono suddenly appeared from the shimmering portal, raising his sharp blade above the heads of his stunned enemies. With one lightning-fast circular strike, the hero cut down the monsters, precisely fulfilling his stern promise. The veteran noted with satisfaction that his complex plan to destroy the squad continued to work perfectly. The guy watched the reaction of the last surviving elite hobgoblin through the glass of his motorcycle helmet. The veteran watched the fierce battle between the monsters in amazement, wondering about the reasons for their sudden enmity. The hero resolutely rushed into battle, realizing the complete lack of choice in this dangerous situation. The hobgoblin, with a furious cry, leaped from above, bringing his heavy club down on the veteran's head. The blades clashed with a deafening clang as Seongho desperately tried to hold back the enemy's crushing onslaught. A powerful blow threw the guy back, and he crashed hard with his back into the trunk of a tree. Sonyo could barely breathe from the pain, admitting that the enemy's strength had far exceeded all his expectations. The wounded fighter fought with all his might against fainting, seeing the monster's weapon raised above him. A blinding flash of light marked the critical moment of the collision that would determine the outcome of this deadly duel. The sudden activation of the Will to Live skill filled the veteran's eyes with a dangerous golden glow. The hobgoblin continued his attack, but was met with fierce resistance, accompanied by a powerful magical explosion of energy. Seono, engulfed in a golden glow, rushed forward to attack the hobgoblin, clutching a weapon in his hand. The veteran pointed the barrel of his pistol straight at the enemy, deciding to use his last chance to end the fight. The golden goblin tried to escape with a bag of treasure, but a well-aimed shot caught him in the thicket. The hero surveyed the battlefield with satisfaction, noting that at this stage all objectives had been successfully achieved. Seono took aim again at the hobgoblin, who swung his heavy club in anger to retaliate with a powerful blow. A hail of bullets pierced the body of the huge monster, causing it to bleed green blood and shudder in pain. The wounded goblin chieftain collapsed to the ground, realizing that his feigned weakness had not fooled his experienced opponent. The veteran, with a cold glint in his eyes, raised his blade, announcing that it was his turn to strike. The hobgoblin let out his final death rattle as the life finally left his battle-ravaged body. Seono let out a sigh of relief as he looked at the notifications about his level up and the acquisition of a new useful survival skill. The veteran learned a new orientation skill, lamenting its absence at the very beginning of the journey. Seono received the magic gloves and was pleased to note the significant increase in his current dexterity. The hero stood warily in the thicket, wondering how close the search party was to his position. The young man resolutely ordered the gates to be opened, taking all the necessary equipment from the dangerous forest. The veteran disappeared into the portal, planning to wait out the search operation in his safe haven. The next day, the wounded Seonho woke up to the joyful barking of his faithful dog. The guy looked at his watch and was surprised to realize that he had slept for a whole day. Seono decided to be more careful in using the dangerous skill that was exhausting his body to the limit. The survivor began to inspect the loot dumped in a huge bag in the middle of the room. The veteran looked at the trophies with delight, amazed at the uniqueness of the items received from the Golden Goblin. Seono put the revolver aside, considering the knife he had found to be a much more important trophy in the current situation. The veteran was delighted with the mithril knife, which possessed eternal strength and was not afraid of metal decay. The young man wondered how an ordinary goblin came to have a valuable artifact worth 100 game points. The hero noticed strange irregularities on the surface of the blade, carefully examining every detail of the valuable find. Seono abruptly stopped his thoughts, focusing his gaze on one sudden guess. The boy pondered the development of monsters, who clearly could not forge such weapons on their own. He imagined mutated blacksmith creatures capable of creating complex tools and dangerous equipment. Seono pushed the worrying thoughts away, deciding that he had gotten too caught up in his assumptions. The survivor began rummaging through the bags, eager to quickly find out the contents of the Golden Goblin's remaining trophies. The hero found shadow grapes that could significantly improve his vision in the pitch darkness of the night. Seono concluded that goblins' nightly walks had become a common occurrence in this world. The hero examined the 6th level status window, noting the incredibly rapid progress of his personal skills. Having finished his business, the guy activated the gate with a habitual gesture for an immediate return to reality. As soon as Seono caught a signal, his phone literally exploded from hundreds of missed notifications. The young man looked through the messages in surprise, amazed at the number of people who were persistently seeking a meeting with him. The veteran decided to first stop by the fitness center to get a sense of the current situation in the city. The sports complex building greeted the hero with bright sunlight streaming through wide panoramic windows. As soon as he crossed the threshold, Seono ran into Hyunjun, who did not hide his sincere joy at the meeting. Mikyun and her partner ran up to the guy, emotionally expressing their feelings about his absence. The friend quickly introduced Seono to the other survivors, calling him the reliable owner of a popular Korean eatery. Seono politely greeted the girl and the boy, feeling the curious glances of the gathered strangers. The survivors were animatedly discussing the recent news, while the guy carefully examined the situation inside the shelter. Hyunjin took his friend aside to secretly ask him about his incredible adventures. The veteran briefly recounted the events in the forest, omitting the most dangerous details of his expedition. Mikyung approached them with a serious look and asked Seonho about his plans. The hero calmly replied that he intended to continue fortifying his diner before the asteroid hit. A group of people in the hall began to visibly panic when they heard about the food shortage. Sonyo offered to help organize the defense, understanding the inevitability of an imminent attack by new monsters. Friends agreed with his arguments, recognizing the veteran's vast experience in the rules of survival. The young man left the fitness center, deciding to immediately begin setting traps around the area. The blonde man confidently lectured those around him, declaring that goblins were merely an easy source of experience points and levels. He urged Seonho to focus on supplies while he listened to these strange instructions with obvious suspicion. Seonho politely apologized to the blonde and bluntly stated that his judgments about the rules of survival were fundamentally wrong. When confronted with a direct question, the guy sheepishly admitted that he had studied the game's features solely from forum posts. The blonde nervously warned his companions against blindly trusting forum rumors, trying to save face in front of those present. Migyun asked with concern in her voice what criteria the system used to decide who would survive and who would become a zombie. Trying to calm his companion, the guy put forward a hypothesis about magical protection for everyone who touched any awakened player. Suddenly tensing up, he suspiciously inquired on what basis his comrades had even considered him a man who had acquired abilities. The blonde smugly explained his awakening as a result of his past gaming experience and fateful contact with the mysterious system. The stern giant confirmed the theory about the safety of the contactees, finally convincing Migyeon of the reliability of their current position. The girl suggested sticking with Kyung-hoon, and he happily urged everyone to simply trust him. The companion asked the blonde man with interest whether he had managed to complete the difficult training in the game. Kyung-hoon pompously vowed to protect everyone, causing only confusion in Seonho with his strange behavior. Seonho was skeptical about the lack of evidence that the awakened were immune to the virus. The veteran sighed heavily, realizing that empty talk would lead to nothing in this situation. The hero assumed that Hyun had called him because he didn't trust this suspicious guy. Seonho stood up decisively and announced his departure, despite his comrades' requests to stay a little longer. He decided not to share any important information and briefly stated that he had things to do. On his way home, Seonho planned to stop by the shops to prepare for the coming epidemic. Right at the hero's house, he was joyfully greeted by Suyeon, who had been waiting for his return for a long time. Suyeon approached the hero and asked if he had a minute to give her something. She handed over a first aid kit containing rare antibiotics and strong painkillers that could not be purchased without a prescription. Sonyo asked in amazement if he could take it, and the girl promised to forge new recipes. The girl gave her exact address in Edenville and reminded him that the parts were inside the first aid kit. She reminded them of the favor and emphasized that it was important for both of them to know each other's location. After saying goodbye, she headed to the gym, and Seonho wished her a safe journey and walked away. Turning around, Soo-yeon shouted after him so that he wouldn't forget to pay for the medicine and remember her address. Watching her go, Seonho angrily called this pushy person a real natural disaster. After this meeting, time flew by, and the hero began to actively visit a variety of places. He bought a mountain of equipment and built a spacious warehouse made of sandwich panels on his property. In his spare time, Seonho diligently dug deep ditches using his newly commissioned mini excavator. Meanwhile, the global situation was rapidly escalating, plunging society into an abyss of protests and growing chaos. Television airwaves were filled with heated debates between frightened alarmists and skeptics who didn't believe in the threat. The UN called an emergency meeting amid news of the US president's urgent visit to South Korea. Frightening press releases have leaked online about a group of unidentified and mysterious spaceships approaching the planet. The space objects codenamed Injambi Beta and Alpha continued their deadly movement inexorably towards Earth. Flaming meteorites entered the atmosphere, confirming the worst fears about the inevitability of a coming global collision. 4 agonizing days passed, and the world stood still, waiting for the last sign before the end began. A Russian ship appeared on the horizon, that very final event that foreshadowed the imminent collapse of the familiar civilization. After making sure there were no prying eyes, Seonho made his way into the abandoned port building to make final preparations. Sungho resolutely activated the shimmering dimensional gate, aware of the inevitable risk of turning into a bloodthirsty zombie. The hero's main goal was the dangerous removal of firearms from a mysterious and sinister Russian ship. He understood that the caustic zombie spores were a pathogen of colossal power, which was almost impossible to avoid. The veteran prepared the boat, philosophically reflecting on the fact that the hour of his conversion could come today. The lack of a family made the risk worth it, even though he could have simply lived peacefully with Dingo. Before leaving, Seonho paused for a moment to consider the true meaning of his actions in this dying world. Having completed loading the equipment, he coldly stated that he was completely ready, without feeling any desire to die. The man consciously chose to take a high risk, expecting to receive a commensurately high and valuable reward. Sungho accepted the harsh reality of life with a slight smile as he checked his smartphone one last time. The list of changes to the system promised weakening of zombies and new ways to earn points for killing enemies. Seonho was extremely amazed at how quickly the points in the system changed. Looking at the screen, the hero realized with alarm that the predicted terrible events were finally beginning. An emergency tsunami alert arrived on my smartphone, confirming the beginning of the third ominous sign. Loudspeakers on the tower broadcast an alarm signal throughout the area, warning the population of imminent danger. The water began to rapidly recede from the shore, leaving flopping fish and crabs on the sand. The sea level dropped so low that moored boats sank helplessly onto the exposed seabed. A massive tidal wave began its deadly journey, threatening to wipe the coastal town off the face of the earth. A gigantic wave of water was inexorably approaching the port, bringing with it destruction on a colossal scale. The colossal Russian ship was lifted and thrown onto the shore by the incredible power of the raging waters. Seonho watched in horror as the giant ship rushed towards him along with the tsunami. Looking at the flooded city, Seonho concluded that fighting monsters was much easier than fighting such a natural disaster. The hero watched the ship approach through binoculars, feeling completely powerless in the face of a global natural disaster. Seonho peered tensely at the horizon through the lenses, barely containing his trembling as he realized the scale of the impending catastrophe. The veteran put down his binoculars and firmly decided to move forward, despite the frightening situation around him. He rushed quickly to his boat, realizing that at this critical moment there was not a second to lose. Donning a protective helmet, Seonho sped up to get ahead of the government agents who would soon arrive at the disaster area. The hero steered his ship straight towards the waves, determined to complete the task at any cost. He gripped the ropes tightly, tightening the knots, and noted to himself that so far everything was going strictly according to schedule. After preparing his gear, Sano focused on checking the tightness of his tactical helmet before heading out into the open water. Approaching the Russian ship, he confirmed that the awakened were indeed immune to the zombie virus. Sonyo clenched his fists in satisfaction, noting the complete lack of any side effects after contact with the contaminated ship. The hero briskly began to climb the ladder to the deck, deciding that the current situation was developing quite well. On board, he was greeted by the eerie groans of starving zombies, who were slowly wandering in search of living flesh. The man coldly called out to the monsters, getting their attention and preparing for the inevitable bloody clash in the confined space. Dressed in a tactical helmet and vest, the veteran ironically greeted his old acquaintances, recalling the gameplay features of these creatures. The hero knew that the local zombies did not infect with the virus, but perceived absolutely any matter as food. Seono remembered that the strength of these creatures grew in direct proportion to the amount of nutrients they absorbed. He struck the first enemy who rushed at him with fury, urging them not to stand with their mouths open but to attack. The veteran, with a powerful circular swing of his spiked mace, ordered the zombies to cover their mitten, crushing the skulls of the attackers one by one. Every movement of Sanho was filled with crushing energy, turning the deck of the Russian ship into a place of brutal and effective reprisal. Seono noticed that the zombies had become significantly weaker, and ironically asked if the developers had nerfed them. For the victory, the hero received 4 points, noting that previously it took much more hits to kill. The veteran gripped his spiked mace tighter, reminding himself not to relax like he had the last time with the orc. The hero stood in the doorway, realizing that now one accurate hit on the enemy was enough for him. Sonyo cursed and moved deeper into the ship with a concentrated mind, preparing for more clashes in the dark corridors. Peering into the narrow passage, the man was amazed by the huge number of zombies, whose red eyes glowed in the darkness. The veteran calmly decided to first clear the corridor of the creatures, which had already begun to emit eerie screams. With quick swings, he crushed 2 more, earning extra points and hoping to quickly find the coveted pistol. Sonyo headed towards the wheelhouse, but a sudden loud sound made him turn around sharply and become wary. Hearing a distinct shot, the hero flinched in shock and wondered if there was anyone else left on the ship who had survived. Sonyo suggested that ordinary people could survive even without direct contact with the awakened. He realized the need to check the premises and resolutely rushed forward to try to save the survivors. Looking into the dark cabin, the hero bitterly wondered if he was too late. Seono's gaze fell on the blood-stained photograph of a smiling girl lying in the dead sailor's hand. Looking around the scene of the tragedy, the veteran sank into a heavy silence, realizing the cost of every mistake in the apocalypse. He bent over the body of the blonde man who had shot himself, realizing that his attempt to save himself had been unsuccessful. Having taken the treasured case with weapons and a pistol, the veteran mentally thanked the deceased for his efforts. Sonyo silently left the cabin to the sound of his own footsteps, leaving the dead sailor in eternal peace. Coming out into the corridor with a heavy box, the veteran focused on heading towards the exit with the captured trophies. He stated that after the end of the world begins, similar tragedies will happen to people constantly. Seono stepped on the gas pedal with determination, trying to get out of the dangerous crash zone as quickly as possible. The hero thought gloomily about how, in order to survive, he would sometimes have to take the lives of others. The veteran noticed another boat in the distance and was surprised by someone else's obsession with finding valuable game loot. 2 motorboats sped through the choppy waters, sharing a common goal in the chaos. Sonyo watched his competitor closely, maintaining his speed and holding the tiller of his boat tightly. The veteran noted with satisfaction to himself that the current developments were turning out quite well for him. The man coldly admitted the futility of pretense, honestly calling himself a hypocrite in these new harsh conditions. The next day arrived, and at dawn, Seonho sighed heavily as he acknowledged the inevitability of the coming changes. The hero read the news about the search for the game developer and thought about the need to contact headquarters. The president made a decisive statement after receiving irrefutable evidence of the existence of bloodthirsty zombies in reality. Seono realized that his dark thoughts completely coincided with the president's plans and intentions. The veteran decisively dialed the number to provide the government with the final, irrefutable evidence of the impending disaster. The task force member took the call while Sanho confirmed his knowledge of the exact time of the asteroid's impact. Seono puzzled his interlocutor with a question about the hobgoblin's injury, causing him to doubt the caller's identity. The stunned operative froze in shock, realizing that a true survival expert was on the line. The veteran coldly cut off any unnecessary questions, making it clear that the time for empty talk had long since passed. The hero dictated the exact date of the apocalypse and warned of the imminent arrival of an important secret package. Sonyo expressed hope that the transmitted data would be used correctly to save all humanity. The protagonist briefly wished his unwitting allies good luck and ended this fateful telephone conversation. The president's resolute image shone amid the global threat, confirming his readiness to act. Sonyo followed the panic and news about the deployment of troops to important facilities on social media. The veteran doubted the accuracy of the data when the government began issuing urgent alerts to citizens through loudspeakers. Authorities ordered people to urgently stock up on food and immediately return to their families. Loudspeakers were broadcasting demands to cease all activity, promising to make an official statement late in the evening. Seono watched the people's perfect reactions and even regretted not warning them earlier. The hero clenched his fist, thinking about the risk of starting the rescue operation much earlier than expected. The veteran cast aside his doubts, realizing that simple guesses would not have been able to prevent the disaster anyway. Looking at the moon, Seonho remembered the important promise he made that day. The protagonist admitted that he was not a hero, but just an ordinary person striving for survival. Seono decided to stay in the game world because the limitations of reality were preventing him from realizing his plans. On the third day of survival, the veteran finished digging a defensive ditch, realizing the scale of the work ahead. Seonho methodically sorted through the tapes he found, sorting through useful knowledge about cooking and farming. During reconnaissance on the second day, Dingo led his owner to an amazing find in the forest. Seono discovered ripe sun apples, suggesting the presence of magical fertile soil in the area. A sudden problem on the last day of his stay made the hero stand warily at the entrance. The veteran noticed that 2 packages of marmalade were missing and demanded an explanation from his furry companion. Seono picked up a strange dried grape from the floor, trying to figure out the reason for its appearance. The protagonist sternly asked Dingo if he had secretly eaten the valuable food supplies from the warehouse. The veteran caught his pet in a lie, noticing his guilty look and characteristic smacking sound. Seeing the dog's genuine bewilderment, Seono admitted that Dingo was unlikely to be involved in the theft. Seono found the dog innocent and decided to thoroughly check the surveillance footage. The veteran was intently studying video files on his laptop, trying to figure out the mysterious marmalade thief. The protagonist froze in utter amazement when he saw something completely unbelievable on the screen. The camera captured a group of strange bugs cleverly making their way inside through the doggy door. Seono was amazed by the honesty of the insects who left a grape in exchange for the stolen packages of sweets. The veteran was shocked by the presence of clear signs of high intelligence and morality in these creatures. The hero clutched his head in despair, regretting the impossibility of seeing this phenomenon in person. Seono quickly locked the animal passage to prevent further visits from the forest thieves. The protagonist concentrated magical energy and opened a portal, awaiting the arrival of important guests today. The veteran greeted the people gathered in the living room, noting their punctuality under the strict restrictions. Hyunjin introduced the last member of the group, whom he brought to meet the rest of the survivors. An embarrassed young man named Yoo Hyun politely greeted the allies gathered in the room. The engineering student admitted to having little gaming experience, but Seono immediately accepted him because of his useful technical skills. The protagonist formally introduced himself to Yoo Hyun and offered to move on to a friendly conversation without unnecessary formalities. The veteran urged the group to hurry up with the introduction so that they could take turns sharing all the important information they had. Seono invited the muscular man to begin the story, to which he responded with slight surprise. The man recalled how his phone connection with his ex-wife suddenly ended during an important conversation. The concerned father said he immediately went to check on his daughter's safety after losing contact. The hero shared strange observations he noticed on the way back during his emergency trip. An eyewitness described military checkpoints and barricades that soldiers began to set up en masse on highways. Haijin announced an emergency evacuation of all residents from the industrial area of Ulsan on orders from the authorities. A girl named Su Yeon confidently added her only important piece of news to the general list of facts. The screen showed an image of a massive concrete shelter, recently built by the military in an ordinary civilian park. Su Yeon spread her hands in amazement, admitting that she still doubted what she had seen in person. Migyeon listened carefully to her allies before revealing the secrets she and Yoo Hyun had overheard. The girl spoke about the mass arrests of officials who dared to speak out against the decisive decrees of the current president. Seongho folded his hands in concentration, admitting that the information he had obtained had proven to be far more valuable and useful than he had expected. The veteran reflected on the nearness of the finale, deliberately questioning each member of his small, motley group. The hero realized that convincing people required compelling arguments, although revealing his identity would make the task easier. Seongho, suppressing internal risks, called on his new allies to listen calmly to his own plan of action. Sonyo suggested that the president is trying to control the inevitable apocalypse as much as possible in order to save the country. The veteran recalled the inexplicable restrictions that suddenly began on the afternoon of July 16th. The hero wondered why the government had decided to completely shut down all government agencies. Seongho grimly stated that the end of civilization was near, causing Yoo Hyun to freeze in fear. The veteran explained to his allies that July 20th would be the day X immediately after the lockdown was lifted. Yoo Hyun jumped up from his seat, horrified by the mortal danger to his family. Sayano sternly stated that personal survival must now take precedence over family ties. The veteran urged Hyejin and the others to remember the harsh realities of the impending global catastrophe. The leader warned the group that tomorrow any of them could suddenly turn into a bloodthirsty zombie. Sonyo decisively took out the documents and urged his allies to immediately move on to discussing specific matters. Sayano placed envelopes with a training guide and important survival information on the table and announced that this was precisely why he had gathered everyone. Hyejin asked in amazement where the leader had such deep knowledge. Sungho and Mikyung mutually apologized for hiding an important truth from each other for so long. Mikyung clutched the valuable documents to her chest as the leader allowed her to use them freely. Sayano strictly instructed his allies to strictly follow all instructions they received for completing the training. It was midnight, and the hero was reflecting on his 32 days of intense preparation. The veteran acknowledged his selfishness as necessary, looking at a collage of past harsh battles. Sayano clenched his fist tightly, aware of the possible negative consequences of his difficult decisions. The hero looked resolutely into the distance, not at all regretting the actions he had taken for the sake of survival. A flare flashed brightly across the night sky above the city, marking the beginning of a new era. Missiles streaked across the night sky, racing toward the falling asteroid to attempt to intercept it. A deafening explosion lit up the horizon, causing the hero to curse helplessly from the realization of failure. Sayano lowered his binoculars, terrified of the imminent end of the world. Looking into the glow, the young man bitterly confirmed his fears about the inevitability of the coming catastrophe. As dawn broke, the military lifted the restrictions and trucks moved through the empty streets. The protagonist has completed the basic preparations for the shelter, installing bulletproof glass and a strong, reinforced door. Following his morning routine, Seonho habitually injected himself with a small dose of the deadly poison. Overcoming the pain, the guy persistently did push-ups to develop the necessary resistance to toxins in his body. Having finished his training, the hero concentrated on putting on his tactical gear and checked his watch. Seonho calmly shared breakfast with his faithful pet, preparing for the first day of the apocalypse. The protagonist was plunged into anxious anticipation of the appointed hour, sitting in front of the turned-off television screen. The sudden noise made Seonho jump and realize that the predicted events had finally begun. Dingo the dog listened warily to the strange interference coming from the speakers of the faulty device. An exhausted president appeared on the screen and began his urgent address to the frightened citizens. The politician ordered everyone to immediately barricade themselves at home while the army took control of the media. A huge, flaming asteroid was rapidly approaching Earth, threatening to destroy all life on the planet. The head of state, cigarette in hand, confidently declared his complete control over the situation. Seonho turned off the remote, bitterly admitting the futility of his hopes of averting the apocalypse. The young man stood up resolutely and reminded himself of the need to survive in the ensuing chaos. The armed veteran, together with his faithful dog, prepared to meet the end of the world fully armed. The veteran spent 2 hours checking the warehouse with supplies for farming inside the game world. The real world instantly turned into a living hell, drowning in chaos and mass unrest. Panicked, the people immediately began to show cruelty, furiously grabbing each other's throats. Some madmen decided to completely cast aside morality and give full rein to their deepest desires. The naked fat man cried out in joy, rejoicing at the opportunity to do whatever he wanted before his inevitable death. Amidst the general madness, there were those who cold-bloodedly killed those around them without a shadow of remorse. Inhak hit a random passerby with his SUV and rudely scolded him for his carelessness. The bandit indifferently stated that the death of this loser would save the world from unnecessary problems during the epidemic. The blonde man with the baseball bat aggressively ordered Seonho to stop staring at them from the roof of the building. The criminal mockingly advised the hero not to turn into a zombie, promising him a few fame points. Seonho watched in bewilderment as strange leaflets like a declaration of war rained down from the sky. The young man noted with irony that the government continues to worry about the safety of citizens even in hell. The hero carefully studied the found map on which the location of the secret shelter was clearly marked. The protagonist thought that the apocalypse would be bearable if there were more reasonable people around him. Clutching the important document in his hand, the veteran humbly acknowledged that all people are irreparably different. Seonho resolutely left the rooftop and headed to the basement to complete the final stages of preparation. 3 minutes before the zombie spores fell, the hero completed the final check of his equipment. The strategist looked anxiously at the flamethrower cylinders and hammer, wondering if this weapon would last until the epidemic. The young man looked at the map again, confirming that he had memorized all the key routes. The veteran looked at his wrist, reminding himself to change his regular watch for a magical metal one in time. Seono chuckled and thought that his meticulous preparation wasn't paranoia at all, but a thorough approach. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the hero put on his protective helmet, realizing that he had done everything possible to save himself. He confidently pressed the pedal, noting that 4 hours had already passed since the fall. Seono rode his motorcycle out of the shelter as the ominous zombie spores finally reached all of Korea. On the city streets, people cried out for help in panic, realizing the beginning of a terrifying zombie apocalypse. Heejin, wearing red pants, fell to his knees and clutched his throat in agony, choking. The infected writhed on the asphalt as the virus rapidly transformed ordinary passers-by into bloodthirsty and insane monsters. Newly converted zombies with bright red eyes filled the empty alleys with their first furious and piercing scream. Seono flew past the monsters at speed, trying not to linger in the dangerous areas of the infected city. Having rushed past the crowd, the veteran calmly noted that there were fewer zombies on the streets than expected. Seono realized with a cold heart that the low number of zombies on the streets had a perfectly logical explanation. He realized that most people chose to meet the end of the world at home with their loved ones. The veteran suggested that there were simply almost no people left on the streets who had not yet turned to the police. The hero confidently increased his speed, considering the current silence in the city to be an advantageous circumstance for the matter. Sonyo cynically noted that the absence of panicking people underfoot would make his upcoming farming much easier. The motorcyclist sped through the empty streets at high speed, heading towards his specific destination. Arriving at the building, he was delighted to see that the security shutters had not yet been lowered. The man slammed the heavy hammer down on the glass with furious force, instantly shattering the barrier into pieces. Once inside, the survivor extended his hand and prepared to immediately open his spatial gate. Seongho deftly jumped over the counter, realizing the urgent need to act as quickly and accurately as possible. The hero frantically grabbed medicines from the shelves, realizing that the virus needed time to take over the bodies. The veteran threw medicine into the glowing portal, trying to get to the hardware store without any unnecessary collisions. In the shelter, the white beast watched with interest as bubbles poured out of the magical gates. A pile of medicine boxes quickly grew right in front of the surprised pet, filling the room. Seongho noted with satisfaction that the pharmacy cleanup was complete, glancing at his tactical watch. The man enthusiastically noted that he was completing his planned task much faster than he had originally expected. However, the joy gave way to slight bewilderment when he encountered an unexpected obstacle at his next goal. The survivor was outraged by the double security at the entrance, considering such security measures to be overly strict. Seono praised his foresight for bringing a powerful cutter with him just in case. The veteran began to open the metal, but immediately winced from the excessively loud and dangerous noise of the tool. The veteran noted with concern that the loud noise of the cutter would certainly attract zombies even with their weakened senses. Sonyo froze tensely as he heard the first ominous and hoarse sounds of the approaching living dead in the silence of the street. He calmly assessed the situation, realizing that the number of enemies was now completely irrelevant to him. The survivor cynically called the crowd approaching him cute zombies, who were limping in unison straight towards him. The hero recalled the incident with the Russian ship, finally becoming convinced of the predictability of the behavior of these slow and stupid creatures. Seono confidently stated the weakness of the monsters at an early stage, before they had time to prey on anyone. The veteran easily repelled the attack of the first undead, considering weakened enemies unworthy of his high level of play. The man expertly delivered a crushing blow, knowing that even a novice could easily bring down a zombie by attacking its weak points. The former player moved through the crowd with lightning speed, turning a dangerous skirmish into a routine clearing of the area of infected. Seono finally confirmed his theory about the enemy's weakness by crushing the skull of another monster with a precise and powerful move. The veteran crushed the enemy with cold blood, noting that the difficulty of this world turned out to be significantly lower than the game's. Seono watched with satisfaction as the points accumulated, realizing how easy it was to earn money under the new conditions. Surrounded by the dead, the hero lazily pondered his next steps, completely unaware of any real threat. The veteran recalled the standard tactic of luring them out one by one, but considered it overly boring and time-consuming. He acknowledged the temporary limitations of his movements due to the heavy fuel tank on his back. Sonyo reached for the blowtorch with determination, planning to use the power of the flame against the advancing crowd of infected. The man intended to burn all his opponents at once, bringing forward his dangerous and effective homemade weapon. The hero contemptuously called the monsters bastards, calmly covering himself with a tactical shield from their chaotic and sluggish attacks. The veteran admitted that he used to simply ignore them to save time, but now he has changed tactics. Sonyo's powerful blow instantly crushed the skulls of 2 zombies at once, staining the asphalt with their dark blood. The veteran swiftly launched a blow at the enemy, emphasizing that his actions were dictated by calculation, not fear. Seono held his shield calmly as a horde of crazed zombies tried to break through his carefully crafted and reliable defense. The man mockingly urged the dead to use their brains, continuing to skillfully maneuver among their chaotic and furious attacks. The hero recalled that he spent more than 5,500 hours studying this harsh game. Sonyo rushed quickly through the empty area, noting the complete absence of living dead in this section of the route. The veteran contemptuously asked his enemies if they really expected to defeat such an experienced and prepared player. Having dealt with another group of infected, Sano admitted with a little excitement that this battle had been quite fun. The survivor decisively flicked his lighter, calling the upcoming use of fire his well-deserved and long-awaited reward in this apocalypse. Seono promised to send a crowd of zombies to the next world with fire, directing a powerful stream of flame at them. After the large-scale battle ended, the veteran rode his motorcycle to the hardware store to get some new necessary resources. Seono arrived at the police station and was annoyed to find that the weapons room was already completely empty. The veteran didn't have time to get upset when he noticed something extremely useful for himself among the corpses scattered around the parking lot. He found a dead officer with a backpack, next to which a loaded revolver lay on the asphalt. The hero pulled the lock with anticipation, intending to check the contents of the tactical gear he had found. The man noted with satisfaction that inside the bag were exactly the weapons and ammunition he was looking for. Meanwhile, the motorcyclist was already heading at full speed towards his fourth planned resource farming point. Seono calmly assessed the situation, confident that the situation in the city was still under control. Thanks to the terrain detection skill, the hero's eyes glowed blue, scanning the space around him. The equipment items greatly increased his perception, allowing him to see the silhouettes of enemies through the walls of buildings. A veteran on a motorcycle easily escaped from groups of zombies that tried to chase him through the streets. Sonyo arrived at the motorcycle dealership and logically reasoned that at a time like this, survivors would be thinking about the same thing. He quickly collected all the remaining supplies and useful spare parts for the ATV into his storage. The hero decided to check his current status in the real world by carefully studying the pop-up status window. The veteran took a short break to clear accumulated debuffs while his dimensional gate was temporarily broken. After resting, the man went outside, adjusting his helmet and preparing to continue his mission in the city. Seono turned around tensely, feeling like he was being watched or that someone was approaching with a clear threat. Enemies emerged from around the corner on a motorcycle, shouting furiously that they had finally managed to track down their target. Inhack, his eyes sparkling, advised the hero to stay at home if he did not have the abilities of an awakened player. The stalker angrily asked Seonho if he had any idea how long and hard they had been searching for him throughout the city. A sudden burst of energy lit up the street as the enemy decided to immediately demonstrate their strength in the ensuing skirmish. Seono cursed and noted that the pursuers were too persistent and would soon catch up with him. The veteran decided to use his abilities and immediately began to open new spatial gates. Inhack ordered his partner to keep an eye on the zombies, considering killing the main character an extremely simple task. The blonde man mockingly advised Seonho to prepare for death before the official training began. The brazen player confidently declared that the game system would definitely not consider him an ordinary killer. Inhack glared at Seonho, calling him a freak and expressing his utter contempt. The pursuer became nervous and began to look around, not understanding where his main target had suddenly disappeared to. The guy in the red vest became worried, realizing that this mysterious opponent could be extremely dangerous. Inhack was horrified and wondered if Seonho was really capable of killing a living person. The veteran grabbed the enemy's throat with an iron grip and ordered him to answer questions calmly. Seonho grabbed the blonde man roughly by the neck, accusing him of stealing the girl he was interested in. The guy grinned mockingly, hinting at Seonho's intimate relationship with the neighbor he had kidnapped earlier. The enraged protagonist delivered a powerful kick to his opponent, causing him to howl in sharp pain. The reclusive chief loomed over his fallen enemy, offering him one last chance to redeem himself. The blonde laughed cynically, accusing Seonho of being overly concerned about people during the robbery. The guy brazenly declared that he and the main character were the same idiots and reached for his weapon. Shouting insults, the blonde suddenly pulled out a pistol and opened fire on the veteran standing in front of him. Seonho reacted instantly to the shot, dodging the bullet aimed at his head with astonishing agility. Approaching the enemy, the hero dryly confirmed that he was right, acknowledging the presence of similar traits in their characters. Seonho thanked the boy for clearing his thoughts, and then firmly grabbed his head. Seonho squeezed the blonde's jaw hard, grimly acknowledging his resemblance to this unprincipled scum. The veteran dealt a crushing blow, internally lamenting the need to commit such atrocities in reality. A system notification appeared above the body of the defeated enemy, indicating that 50 points had been received for the victory. The hero stared at his hands in a daze, realizing how much harder the killing of a person was than any fantasy. A sudden scream made Sayano turn around and see a frightened boy with a bat in his hands. The reclusive chief coldly ordered the stranger to be careful, not taking his eyes off the new threat. A crowd of bloodthirsty zombies suddenly appeared behind the trembling guy, attracted by the noise of the recent fight. While Sayano stood aside, the monsters threw the boy to the floor and began to torment him furiously. The unfortunate man in despair stretched out his hand to the veteran, begging for salvation from the jaws of the maddened dead. The boy's bloody palms slid powerlessly across the tiles as the zombies finally devoured their victim. Sayano looked ahead gloomily, deciding that such scum deserved to die in this crazy world. The system introduced the punitive killer status to stop intentional trolling among players after 3 months. The rules turned out to be crude, although the initial intentions of the game developers seemed good and fair. For the first kill, players received only a warning, as the creators were afraid of losing their audience. There was no mercy after the third crime, when the player officially became a full-fledged killer. The system carefully checked for complicity, allowing some tricksters to get away with it. Players coveted this status for easy points, stat boosts, and stealing other people's skills. The update, released a week before the servers closed, completely changed the usual balance of power. New abilities have become a powerful argument in the struggle for survival in this cruel digital world. It was enough to squeeze the maximum amount of fun out of a boring survival game, turning it into a bloodbath. The system warned that every coin has 2 sides, and the killer is obliged to continue the bloody harvest. When 3 or more players met, a spell was involuntarily activated, creating an impenetrable magical death field. Inside the barrier, a forced deathmatch began, where survivors took the skills of their losing opponents. The situation initially seemed favorable to the assassins, but became toxic among the veterans in the late stages of the game. After receiving the status, the player saw only mountains of corpses around, becoming a target for every survivor he met. Sayano placed his hand on his chest, but did not feel the characteristic pulse expected from system notifications. The veteran looked at the dead blonde, realizing that the training system had not yet been launched in reality. The hero understood that even hours of killing now would not change his status before the start of official training. Through the glass of his helmet, Seonho chuckled darkly, admitting that reality was not a game and he was going crazy. Leaving the boy's body in a pool of blood, the reclusive chief decided to follow the plan and not think about nonsense anymore. The veteran was determined that his ironclad rule of survival would remain unchanged. Seonho raised his crossbow, preparing to respond to any injustice with equally brutal injustice. The protagonist put the weapon in his bag, deciding to kill people only in extreme cases. The reclusive chief activated a spatial skill to close the gate and return to his plan. At 4:30 in the evening, Sanho was observing the situation near the necessary store through binoculars. A huge crowd of zombies surrounded the warehouse building, causing a real bloody strike there. The hero watched the armed men from the rooftop window, wondering how long they would hold out. The sudden sound of breaking glass and the cry of a cursing bandit broke the silence of his observation. Inside the warehouse, a conflict was brewing between 2 groups of survivors due to the inability to get out. The leader of one of the gangs contemptuously called his opponent an idiot, clutching his bat tighter. The gang leader threatened to shoot his opponent in the head with a crossbow if he did not change his insolent tone. The enemy merely grinned sarcastically and demonstratively pulled the trigger of his pistol, ignoring the obvious threat. The guy in red immediately released the arrow, declaring that in Seoul, his main specialization was shooting. The projectile struck the enemy's shoulder with devastating force, causing him to scream hysterically from the unbearable sharp pain. The wounded man's accomplices crowded around him in horror, wondering whether their adversary had truly lost his mind. The shooter, with a cruel smile, proclaimed the advent of an era of survival of the fittest, where moral dilemmas no longer matter. The gang leader ordered the strangers to leave immediately, promising that the next bullet would be aimed straight at the head. The defeated group left the warehouse amid whistles and insults, admitting their complete defeat in this skirmish. The leader in red let out a contented sigh, celebrating the expulsion of his competitors and calling them fucking bastards as a parting word. Finding himself at the exit, the wounded guy sadly reminded his friends about the crowd of zombies waiting for them outside the building. The guy in the white jacket angrily smashed the glass with a bat, calling it his parting gift to his enemies. The leader of the bandits in the red jacket screamed in horror, realizing that this madman had betrayed them to the zombies. Sonia watched through binoculars as frightened people panicked and ran away from the onrushing crowd of dead. The reclusive chief coldly stated that the guy in white had given him a truly rare and useful spectacle. The hero decided that if they ever met alive, he would definitely thank this madman with a gift. The protagonist checked the list of collected resources before the open spatial gate, where a white dog was waiting for him. Looking at his watch, the veteran realized that there was just over an hour left until the end of the battalion cleanup. Seong-ho, wearing a tactical helmet, confirmed his suspicions and called out to Dingo, preparing for the next stage of the sortie. The reclusive boss was determined to change the order of events and announced to the dog that it was now his turn to act. Seono took out the green fuel canisters, wondering about the largest concentration of zombies at the beginning. Sonyo, accompanied by his faithful dog, went out to explore the snowy areas where many zombies usually gathered. The veteran recalled that at the beginning of the game, it was the large supermarkets that became traps, swarming with crowds of hungry undead. The hero began actively flooding the area with fuel from a canister, realizing that such dangerous areas should usually be avoided. An experienced player with over 1,000 hours under his belt understood the benefit of destroying enemies on a large scale with fire. Sonyo noted the advantage of a prepared person over newcomers, who constantly suffer from a fatal lack of resources and experience. Pulling up his tactical helmet, the reclusive chief decisively announced the start of the operation, seeing this as an excellent chance to quickly level up. The veteran considered the golden opportunity to reach level 10 before training began and gain access to the store. When all the preparations were completed, the hero admitted that the harsh reality of the apocalypse was still putting a little pressure on his psyche. Seono cast aside his doubts about the waste of resources, realizing that after the outbreak of the epidemic, oil would still be spilled everywhere. The protagonist activated the magical ability, confidently declaring that with a sober calculation, the potential loss of resources would be quite small. Seono noted that this raid would be excellent training for Dingo before the start of night training. After stroking the dog, the veteran asked him if he was ready to perform all the actions exactly as they had rehearsed. Having received an affirmative nod from the faithful beast, the reclusive chief prepared to give the command to begin the offensive. With a sharp cry, the hero sent Dingo forward, and the dog quickly rushed towards enemy territory. Inside the building, the zombies were furiously tearing at the remains when Dingo's loud barking suddenly distracted them from their meal. The dead turned towards the noise with a growl, throwing away pieces of flesh in pursuit of a new living target. Dingo skillfully maneuvered between the shelves, leading the entire crowd of angry and hungry monsters behind him. The agile dog made a high leap over the zombies' heads, continuing to provoke them with his loud bark. The muzzled, high-speed beast raced through the ranks of its pursuers, luring them deeper into the fiery trap that Seonho had prepared. Dozens of dead hands reached out to the elusive dog as he confidently led the horde straight to the exit. A snow-white dog flew swiftly down the street, dragging behind it a huge crowd of howling and hungry dead people. The veteran admired the majestic figure of Dingo, who masterfully coped with the role of live bait for the horde. Seono calmly struck a lighter, waiting for the bulk of the monsters to be within the fire's blast radius. The reclusive chief threw the lit fuse down and praised his boy when he jumped into the safety of the gate just in time. A bright flame instantly engulfed the fuel-soaked asphalt, cutting off the path of the zombies, frozen in surprise. A fire trap has turned a supermarket into an inferno, leaving the monsters terrified of their impending doom. A powerful explosion shook the surrounding area, finally putting an end to this daring and deadly plan of the experienced player.